Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for Thursday, September 5th, 2013. First matter on, we have two public hearings tonight and two pre-application sessions. First matter is a public hearing that was continued from our last meeting. This is amendment to a prior approval, Swan Street - Bigelow Street definitive subdivision. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing regarding the application by Swan Street Development Company, LLC, for approval of an amendment of the definitive subdivision plan of the above premises that had been originally approved by decision dated March 16, 2011, and amended by decision dated January 18, 2012. This application is seeking extension of the, extension of the street of the length of 338 feet to create 5 additional lots from one lot previously zoned HRC, which is high-rise, with the extended street to be named Ashby Way, reduction of the street width from 45 to 40 feet, and relocation of the detention area to proposed Lot 5. The site is located in the suburban single-family zoning district. At the last meeting, the matter was continued to get the approval from the Conservation Board, and we had a couple of questions about the Homeowners Trust Association, and a couple of questions about where the plans had a chance to be looked over by the city engineer. I believe since our last meeting, the Conservation Commission did meet and did act on this project. So saying that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is David Plunkett, representing the proponent, Swan Street Development Company, LLC. Here with me tonight is Dan Corvus from DK Engineering, the project engineer, and Roland Mainville of RAM Contracting, who will be the contractor developing the site. Mr. Chairman, as you noted, since the last meeting, we did appear before the Conservation Commission. We had a full complement of board members, and we had a favorable outcome of all applications before the board that night. So we got the approval with standard orders of condition. The only additional issues that we addressed, that we also made reference that it would be part and parcel of what's before the planning board, is relative to the Homeowners Association Trust that we utilize as the prototype, the same trust that was approved for the 2-lot subdivision. The only modifications we have made to it is to obviously reflect that it's now going to be in total 7 lots of land, and that we agreed that as part of the order of conditions, we would make reference in the deeds out of the lots to the individual lot owners. We'll make specific reference, even though it will be part of the recorded chain of title, we will specifically reference to each lot owner that they acknowledge that they are going to be taken subject to the Ashbury Way Homeowners Association Trust, and that they will be subject to all obligations and duties imposed thereunder. And that's basically it, Mr. Chairman. I think that, as we had stated before, it's been a long process. In the hallway, I told Roland and Dan that when we started this, I had hair, so it's been years. And but appreciating sitting on the other side. You also think that sometimes the process. The good thing is that the end result is better for the applicant, for the community, and I think we're very proud of the fact that we've kept everyone in the loop. Everyone has known everything that's going on. We've sent out plans. We've been open for all communication and discussion, and I think the end result is that this is a collaborative effort of all the parties involved, and it's going to be a great project. But if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Plunkett. Anybody else here want to speak in regards to this project this evening? I don't see Mr. Hawkins here, so I'm a little worried. Is he coming? Yeah, he's been here for every meeting, I think, in the past, that I know with us, probably with Conservation, too. Okay, so does anybody else want to speak in regards to this project, one way or another, in favor or against? Anybody else want to speak? Can you speak? If not, at this time, I'll ask any of the board members, do they have any questions or comments or concerns?
I have one question.
Sure.
Well,
Mr. Lockhart?
I know our last meeting, Aaron talked about getting, just reading my notes here for a second, the proper language on the operation of the infiltration system somewhere in the documentation. I assume since the city engineer had really no comments on that, that we've received that.
Yeah, that's supposed to be part of the operations and maintenance plan. That should be submitted to the engineering office, and
I'm sure she's.
it'll be it's actually a condition from the orders of conditions as well, that the Conservation Commission will get it for 3 years, a copy of the operations and maintenance plan.
All right, that's all. I just want clarification.
Attorney Plunkett, one thing I did notice before we go on is, we did get a memo dated today by the city engineer. She says the only comment she has, she reserves the rights to review the homeowners association document. Because in the name of the street is spelled differently throughout the documentation. So what is the approved spelling? So I think it's just for the street name, so I know it was brought up one time by one of the neighbors.
Yeah, we did change and revised it for the purpose when we were submitting the prototype to the Conservation Commission. And I have, revised it to incorporate the dates of the plans I've submitted and the revision dates and everything else. So, certainly we would expect any feedback for, in terms of further updating or proofreading, but I think I can submit this to the board. I have, a form tonight that I believe should be reflective of everything in regards to the.
Sure. You want to submit that? Thank you. I mean, so I know we talked about it before, so what's the spelling of the street going to be?
Well,
I'm sorry.
it's A-S-H-B-U-R-Y.
A-S-H?
Right there, Tom.
Okay, this was at the request of the neighbors, so.
What's it going to be? I'm not, do we know? A-S-H? Okay.
A-S-B-U, okay, so I'll revise that, Mr. Chairman.
I mean-
That was Ashbury, so it's A-S-B-U-R-Y.
Yeah, and then on the homeowners association, you can put down as, referred to herein, incorporated by reference.
Yeah,
Okay. So that was just one thing from the city engineer.
Sure.
That I know that we needed last time. I know the other question was conservation. We acted on that, and the homeowners association, so I just wanted to bring that, okay. So at this time, any of the board members have any questions? Mr. Boyle? No questions, Mr. Okay. Bob? Okay. Jerry?
Just a quick comment. Again, I think Attorney Plunkett kind of summed up how we got to where we are. I think it was a long process, but we started out with the neighbors opposing what was being proposed to a point where the petitioner heard the concerns of the neighbors, and the neighbors were willing to work with the developer and working with the board and working with the city council to change the zoning and end up with I think a project that's going to work for everyone. So again, I commend everybody involved in getting to where we are at this point. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the plan as amended with the incorporating the responses by the petitioner, addressing the conservation concerns and the engineering concerns that we had in our packet, and subject to review by the city solicitor of the homeowners association. And I know it was a boilerplate that was used, but just, again, for final review by the city solicitor, and final review by the city engineer department as well.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? So the motion carries. So council, basically, Joe, I think the conditions were approval, and with the same conditions that were imposed by the Conservation Commission.
That's fine.
Okay, and one of them says that the applicant will submit a copy of the operation and maintenance report to the Conservation Commission for 3 years. Could you just give that report to Division of Planning and Development as well?
Yeah,
It's
that's
all in
fine.
the same house
fine.
anyways, okay?
Yeah.
So that, the homeowners association to be allowed and to have the law department look it over, and the comments that are made by the city engineer. So the motion was made and seconded, and vote was 5-0 in favor.
Thank
luck
you
and
very
thank you.
much, Mr. Chairman, all board members.
Well,
We
good luck.
do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Do a good job up there. I know the neighbor's going to be watching.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the neighbor's input. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Moving along, we have a site plan review and a special permit for 39 Myrtle Street.
Mr. Chairman, board members, good evening. My name's Mr. Underwood, Rick Underwood. I live 45 Butman Road.
Just give me a chance to read the notice, okay? I'll
Oh,
be right with you.
gotcha.
No problem, sir.
You're a
Okay.
little nervous.
That's all right. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to all interested persons relative to the application by Underwood Property Management and Development LLC for site plan review and special permit for a project located at the above-listed address. The existing parcel contains 47,600 square feet of land and one vacant three-story building of approximately 32,000 square feet. The proposal includes the redevelopment of the vacant building into 21 residential units and creation of 44 parking spaces. The applicant is seeking a special permit under Section 11.3 and site plan review under Section 11.4 of the City of Lowell zoning code. The parcel is located in the traditional two-family zoning district. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, before you begin testimony, I just want to say that I will be abstaining from voting on this
All right,
matter.
thank you, Mr. Fischett. Go ahead, please, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name's Rick Underwood, live 45 Butman Road. I'm managing partner of Underwood Properties in Lowell. We got a comment sheet from the city of Lowell, 5 pages long here, but I believe most of it can be hashed out here. There's nothing significant. I spoke with Lisa DeMayo this afternoon, went over the stormwater management concerns of hers. Although she didn't give me a check of okay, she did agree with the changes we were gonna make and wanted to see it, and the calculations changed, but thought it could be worked out with the way we explained it today. First thing on the thing I'd like to address is the parking issue. The traffic engineer had suggested that we move the parking entrance to the property to align it with Fifth Street. And again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I kind of disagree with that. I spoke to some of the neighbors in the area there, and their concern was moving the parking lot entrance closer to the residential. There's only 2 residential houses abutting that property, and that would align the dumpster in the parking lot, right, align those properties, and they were concerned about that. Our other issue would be moving it, would be icing flow going down Fifth Street. Lining that driveway up with Fifth Street directly would increase the chances of the water going down there and icing up, et cetera. We also feel that the turning of the plows coming up Fifth Street would make an unnecessary snowbank in front of our entrance. And again, we just feel that it's just a nicer looking spot to keep the entrance where it is. It's been there for a long time. We haven't had any concerns or back talk with the neighbors. I've spoke to all the abutters. They're all in favor of the plan that we had put forward with our proposal. And so I'd like to, have you look at that and consider that and keeping the parking entrance where it is. Other than that, I'd like to answer any questions or concerns you have with the current things.
Did you receive the copy of the letter from the traffic engineer? Is that the one
I
you're talking
did.
about?
I did.
The parking lot?
And I have a copy of it here.
4 feet wide and 10 feet wider than necessary?
Yeah, I don't, if it's necessary, we can do that. I just don't see how closing that aisle helps anybody. I mean, giving an extra couple of rooms to turn around in there, especially for those who have trucks. I drive a truck. 24 feet still makes it tight in there. A couple extra feet doesn't hurt. Again, we can make that change if you feel it necessary. Again, we'd like to keep it the way it is. But again, if it's something you definitely feel it's necessary. I think it was more of a concern, not a requirement, though, on that. And again, I think in our proposed location for our dumpster, having that extra 5 feet makes it a little easier for them to get in and get that dumpster and making that turn.
Anything else you want to say about the project in whole instead of just a comment, or?
No, I'd like to answer any questions you have about it, though.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to speak in regards to the application, in favor? Or anybody from, any comments at all? Yeah, just come to the microphone, please, sir, and state your name and address for the record, if you would.
Yeah, good evening, my name is George Prokop, 31 Fremont Street, Lowell. I'm the president of the Centralville Neighborhood Action Group, and just wanted to state that we took a vote on this when we first saw the plans, and we thought it was a pretty good plan, and we approved it by vote, and we just think that it will improve our neighborhood, and we wanted to support the development. I know that he just recently, got it 10 days ago. In one of our meetings, only thing that one of the neighbors who lives next to the property stated what he'd like to see it cleaned up because it's been abandoned for so long. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in regards to the project?
Good evening, my name is Anne Marie Page. I reside at 26 Fremont Street in Lowell. I sit on the board of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, and I am the president of the Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council. This is a very good plan. Mr. Underwood took the time to come to our neighborhood group, to meet with the neighbors, to answer questions. We told him what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought was good, what we thought wasn't good for the neighborhood. And we realized he just took this project over to this property about 10 days ago. He's already been in there cleaning up, and that was the concern of the neighborhood. It was getting a little overgrown, it was getting a little messy, but he didn't own it, he couldn't touch it. We've seen the plans, they look good. It not only will be good housing, and we expect to see many homecoming veterans living there till they get up on their feet and able to buy a house. We also like the way he set up the landscaping, so it's not going to be just a rectangular building with a big parking lot. It'll have a little bit of greenery, there'll be some trees. We thought ornamental, the city suggested shade trees, and we figure they must know better than we do. But a tree is a tree, and it's green, and it'll look good. It looks like a good project. And Mr. Underwood, when he opens this project, I believe there will be somebody on site that will be caring for it, so we will be very concerned. That was another one of our concerns. Some of the neighbors said, oh, well, don't cut down the tree, don't do this. Well, we can't have parking, so what was worse, the parking of the tree? So I guess the tree had to go, and God will have to send another tree someplace else, because the neighbors, I guess, really want a little more parking. He's going to have adequate parking. We thank you for your time and effort. Looks like a good project, and that empty building will soon have happy families. Take care.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak in regards to the project? Anybody else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Here, no further speakers. Any questions or comments from the board members?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple.
Sure. Start with you, Bob, if you would.
Hi, I have two plans, I guess landscape plans. One is colored, one is not. One has a dumpster site on it and the other doesn't. Which one is
The one with the dumpster is the revised plan. When we had put the plan together, first site plan, we had forgot the dumpster location.
I I'm a handicapped person, and I have a concern about where the dumpster is and where the handicap spaces are.
Well-
Right against the dumpster. And if I drove into that space next to the dumpster, I would not be able to open my door wide enough to exit my vehicle.
Okay. I believe the handicap spot on that side is accessible for a van, so I believe that space is a little bit wider. We do have some flexibility in the spacing over there, so I mean, we can make that a little bit wider. The reason why we put that over on that side again is to keep it away from the only two residential units that are abutting the property, which are on, looking at the building from Myrtle Street, looking at the building. The only two residential units on the right-hand side. The suggestion from the city was to put the dumpster and the parking entrance on that side. But again, that would line that right up with Fifth Street. You'd come up Fifth Street, you'd look right at our dumpster. Again, you'd have it right next to the residential neighbor there who, it was one of their concern. His kitchen window was right there. So, I mean, we have a lot of land there, but a lot of it is inaccessible in the back. So although there's a big parking lot there, it's really restricted on where you can really put that dumpster. We felt that was the best spot for it.
Okay, I assume it's a rollout dumpster. So-
No, they had made a comment from the city saying that they thought it would only be allowable for a rollout dumpster. I spoke with BFI, and there's enough room with that 28 feet for them to get there and pick up a regular dumpster and not have a rollout dumpster,
Okay,
which is more suitable for us.
that's my only comment.
I addressed, one of the things I didn't mention when I was up here a second ago was we addressed the landscaping, spacing of the trees, the shade compared to ornamental landscaping. So we have a revised plan coming. Our architect was on vacation last week. We didn't get this letter from the city till just about, I don't know, 10 days ago or so. So again, I'd be looking for an approval. Of course, we would be looking for an approval with conditions, and all of that in the works. We can work with Lisa DeMayo, have the stormwater calculations done like she wanted. We can do the tree and planting as wanted. You know, again, I think the dumpster, unless you feel it absolutely necessary, should stay where it is. Same thing with the parking lot entrance. But I think everything else in here, even though it's 5 pages from the city, I think it's all mediocre stuff that we can handle pretty easily.
Anything else, Bob? No? Okay. Mr. Boyle?
Since receiving your comments about, from the traffic engineer, have you been back in to the planning office and gone back over this with them?
No.
Okay,
I tell you the truth, I haven't spoken with anybody from engineering traffic at all.
okay.
To tell you the truth, I didn't know it was a concern.
Okay. How about the comments about the, what they wanted in terms of tree type and location? Have you been back in to discuss that with them?
Yeah, I have. Actually, Joe sent us an email the other day of a list of species, and again, you know, we can rectify that and pick whatever's, you know, suitable for DPW and, you know, not an issue.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I find myself thinking, I'm just thinking out loud here, I have a great deal of deference for Mr. Ebby's opinion. I am, at the same time, what the applicant is saying here about the location of the driveway and the reason why it would be better not to line up with Fifth Street sounds on its face very plausible to me.
Well,
I would like to hear Mr. Ebby get some comments from him about that response to see if he does still feel, even hearing these reasons, if it's necessary. Joe, can you, is there any more on this from the planning office end?
We could try to get a further explanation from Eric Eby about his comments. I think it generally had to deal with some turning movements. There'd be less conflicts with it actually moved down towards Fifth Street, and it would provide for additional queuing space at the intersection if it was moved further down.
those are, and those are exactly what we want, the types of issues we want our traffic engineer to look at, and I appreciate that input from him. There seem to be some issues coming from the other side. For example, the runoff, the water, the snow locations that might not have gone into those calculations. In addition, how big an issue is queuing on this street? Is this something that needs to be a top priority to avoid that queuing? I would like to see a little more meeting of the minds, or whether there can't be a meeting of the minds on this.
There's a lot more space in between Fifth Street and our parking driveway than it looks on paper. I can understand where they don't want to create two, one person turning one way, the other person coming out of the parking lot turning the other way. But you remember that driveway in those street, that entrance has been there for a long, long time. They've been using that, probably a lot more traffic flow during school days than we'd ever have during a residential unit. And it really is spaced quite a bit. I mean, it's not like I can see if they're, the understanding where if they're right next to each other at just a slight angle, there would be some conflicting turning issues there, but this ain't the case in this unit. There's a lot of distance between, there's plenty of room to turn in either side. Matter of fact, you can turn the whole corner and have your car straight and still go another 20 feet before you come to our entrance. So the turning issue, one of our other issues was any city plow that comes up the street on Fifth Street and turns that corner one way or the other is gonna leave all their snow right in front of that entrance. Now, normally you're gonna get snow and when a plow goes by anyway, we all do at our houses, driveways, etc. But when you're turning and you've got a big city plow, you're gonna leave a lot more snow there. So when they come up Fifth Street and they're turning either way on Myrtle Street, they're gonna leave a large amount of snow there. So that was another one of our issues. It's bad enough when they go by the driveway and they leave it there, but I think you all know, when they turn that great big plow, it leaves a lot more of snow.
Now, I assume a project this size, this many units, there would be, the building will have a plowing contractor. It won't be the veterans out there with snow shovels.
Correct. But again, I mean, that's out in the middle of the street. We'll be taking care of our parking lot and our sidewalk and stuff. Unnecessary snow removal is what we're trying to avoid. It's our opinion that there'll be a lot more snow if we line that up with Fifth Street.
And again, I feel that there are good arguments on both sides. I don't feel that I really have a good grasp about what the options are, and I'm not sure that these issues that the applicant are bringing up, has brought up, which sound very legitimate, have been presented to the traffic engineer, and I'd be interested to hear what he has to say.
Well, again, I'd like to express my wish that we could pass this with conditions and have the conditions met by the next step. So if I can meet all the conditions by it's time to go get our permit during that time. What it is everybody wants to get their project going. Everybody wants to, go as fast as possible. But this school's been sitting there for 7 years. We had a lot of damage to that building last year while we were in the process of buying it. We've got broken windows in there. We've had a fire just recently when the kids on the fire, playing underneath the fire escape. 4th of July, we had somebody up on top of the building this is all before we owned it. This school, or this building, doesn't really want to see another winter without, and I can't get working until I pass all my permits, one being this, one else. I mean, it's really important for everybody's project to get going, but this one in particular, this building doesn't want to see another winter. We need to get the windows closed up. We need to get our permits issued. We need to really get moving in this. One of the biggest issues in that building are the hardwood floors. They've already taken a beating last year over the winter. We've got more broken windows now. We'd really like I said, get this approved with conditions, meet all our conditions before the next step, meaning our permitting, and go from there. I don't think any of these are any big issues. I think traffic engineer will see it our way when we sit down and talk. I think Lisa DeMayo and I had a good talk today. I think we can settle all that stuff. We just have to get our calculations in line with her. We're going to address the landscaping, as they want. Our big issue is one, the parking, and one, getting over the hurdle with Lisa DeMayo. But again, I met with Lisa DeMayo for quite some time today. I don't think there's anything that we didn't hash out. It just has to be put down. The calculation has to be put down on paper, a couple of changes to the site plan, and she should be good. So I think this project could get an approval with conditions and make it work. But we really do have to move on this project.
refresh my memory a little, Myrtle Street is basically at grade with your property along your entire frontage along Myrtle Street?
Not really, there's a slight incline going up to Sixth Street.
At the 6th Street end, but not where we'd be talking about possibly moving this entrance.
I'm sorry, explain that again to me?
There's a slight change in grade going up towards the 6th Street end, but
Correct.
not the area where, if this entrance was to be moved, that whole area is basically at grade.
I mean, it's fairly level. I mean, there is some incline in there, but, yeah, it's not a big hill. It's not like Sixth Street or even Beach Street in the back. It is a little more level there.
All right. All right, then, I think I'll finish up now. Let perhaps one of the other board members address the stormwater and the engineering questions.
Sure.
Go ahead, Rich.
I too would like to hear from a traffic engineer and more of his logic behind why he's suggesting those things, and then, you know, try to work those out together. I know in the past I've thought very highly of his opinion too, Joe, and I want to give him the opportunity to do that. Has the fire department looked at this and approved your plans?
At this point, the fire marshal hasn't had to step in and approve anything yet.
Looked at this. All right, that, you know, a project this size, that's absolutely critical, there's no way.
But I mean, we'll be meeting with them on the next step. The permitting issues, we'll have to look at our,
You're looking for site plan approval here tonight. Without fire department approval, I don't know how far we can go with it. Regarding your plans, I don't see your dumpster location on the site layout, whichever plan that is. Could you?
looking at the building, it should be on the far left up against Sixth Street. Closer to the building from Myrtle Street.
I don't see it labeled on this plan titled,
I think it's
oh, wait a minute. Is it labeled?
between the handicapped.
Is it that crosshatch area between the handicap?
Looking at the plan, it should be the middle of the page, left in the center. I'm sorry, left-hand center.
Yeah.
Right next to the two handicap spots.
Well, it's not labeled as such.
You know,
It's on a different sheet.
you might have the,
It
you
is
might
on a
have the
different
first set
sheet.
of plans that we sent
Sign
in.
one of the applications?
I think it's on, he is on a black one.
We revised it. I also have a 9x11 copy here
Oh, all
of
right.
the site plan with the utilities marked. I know there's another concern.
Right. I guess in general, I find your documentation here wanting and somewhat inadequate. I think you mentioned you're going to submit an additional plan, is that right?
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to see this all consolidated on a site layout, so we can look at it, look at snow storage, look at parking, look at where the dumpster is, how the traffic flows, all those important considerations. So you can really make a better judgment. I find it difficult looking at multiple sheets, quite frankly. That's all I have.
Maybe this one back in.
Yeah, the project is,
So the question I have is,
I'd be fine with that space.
on the first comment from the Assistant Planner Joe, who's with us tonight, indicates that your curb opening, you want 16 feet?
No, I don't want 16 feet. It was marked 16 feet on the plan. The gate opening is 16 feet. The curb cut is actually only 15, 2.5.
I'm saying, how much?
15, 2.5. That curb cut was there when the school put that there. But the gate to the entrance that's there now is 16 feet.
Right, because
That gate, that fence will be coming down. That's getting all new 4-foot black chain link fence. I think when the architect laid that out, he went by the gate measurement that was there. But the curb cut, well, I went out and measured the curb cut the other day. That curb cut's only 15 feet, 2.5 inches. And
Because-
that's 15 feet, 2.5 inches with that slight bevel that they cut the thing. I mean,
Because it's noted here, anything over 15, you need a variance from the Board of Appeals.
correct. That's what I mean, it's only 15 too. The marking is the gate on the property. If you went out, if you go out and you measure the actual curb cut, it's only a couple of inches bigger than 15 feet, and that was done, again, long before we,
So the curb cut would stay at 15, okay.
I mean, we could certainly, when we put the fence in, we can certainly close that gate up a little bit to coincide with the curb cut.
So where do you propose to put the snow storage?
The end of the parking lot. There's plenty of spaces on the end. The parking, again, that's where that 28 feet in the middle will come in handy to us rather than the 24. It leaves it a little more, snow will be pushed against the 6th Street side and the residential areas there. Any snow that's, can't be handled with that will be trucked out by ourselves.
So if you push it to the 6th Street side, is that gonna block your dumps in your two handicap spots?
Well, again, we'll handle the snow, and because there's really no place else to put it unless we truck it out. There's, although it's a big parking lot, it only sustains 44 spots. So we'll actually be, for big storms, we'll be moving the snow out.
If you keep it on site, the question is, does it affect the parking that you need to be required?
On the big storm, sure it would, but again, there's no place else to put it there. It's a rectangle parking lot with no access to the back of that school. Easily, no accessibility easily to the back of the school, meaning Beach Street side.
The concern I would have, if you put it by the 6th Street side, most people are gonna plow it straight down, which is gonna block your dumpster and your handicap spots.
Yeah.
You know, if it was designated on the plan, we'd see where it won't be. Well, now, we don't know where it's gonna happen. I mean, if it doesn't get to the dumpster, the handicap doesn't get in, then you have severe problems.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're putting it right by 6th Street, the guy's gonna come in the 6-foot, the 15-foot way and take a left. If there's cars parking, they're gonna push it straight,
Yeah.
gonna block the dumpster and the handicapped cars. I mean, that's not gonna be acceptable. If you can't get to the dumpster or get the handicapped people in.
No.
I have big issues on that. That's why we requested, at least showed on the plan where the snow removal would be. I mean, if you're gonna put it somewhere else, I mean, if you're located on the right-hand side or something else and knew we kept it away from the dumpster, that has to be screened by our regulations. I mean, but putting it down by the handicap, I mean, I think that's the worst place to put it myself personally. I mean, I'd rather see you come in and put it to the right side if need be, go towards
Well,
5th.
I mean, traditionally, when we would be plowing our other properties, we'd be just pushing it to the side, pushing it onto the buffer side, pushing it on the landscaping, pushing where we can get it feasible. There's no real snow store, although, again, even though it's a huge parking lot, there's no extra space to pile snow there.
Well,
I mean, we can push it on the landscaping, we can push it on the side, on the buffer zone, and we can push it against, we have 5 feet against the building, all the way around. And again, like many businesses, when you have too much snow, we do it at the school, I work for the school department. They truck out the snow many times when you get to a spot. When we run out of spots, we'll have to take it off-site.
And sometimes it gets trucked out, and sometimes it doesn't. And if the dumpster's
Yeah,
there, and the
yeah.
handicap's there,
Yeah.
and it might be stuck there for a few days. I mean, a couple of the comments that were made by Plan and Development was, you know, by, the driveway aisle is unnecessary wide. If you cut that down, you gave more green space, then you'd have more place to put the snow.
Yeah.
I mean, they made comments that it was wide. I mean,
Well, like I said in the beginning, that was our wish to keep that a little wider. If we can make it 24-foot, I'll make that decision right now. We'll make the parking lot 24 feet. We'll add that 5 feet to the landscaping. It gives us a little more snow storage, and it also gives us a little more storage for the stormwater.
yeah, I mean, I think that works with everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you pick up some green space. With the
Yeah.
green space, you can definitely put the snow there if you have to.
Yeah. My first thought of keeping that the 28 feet really was because of the dumpster, just give them a little more turning room up there. But again, I think your comments are justified, and I think we can use that extra landscaping space for the snow and the stormwater.
Yeah, and then, you know, if you can try to use some of the landscaping down to the right-hand side, more towards 5th Street, you know, because you really want to stay away from the handicap
Sure.
spots. I mean, especially if you have a van going in there, as Bob mentioned with, you have a handicap van, you got the dumpster there. I mean, the dumpster you can almost put anywhere, really.
Yeah.
That's not a big concern. I mean, obviously, your handicap spots, you want closest to the entranceway and everything else. Whether you put the dumpster down the right-hand side, I mean, I'm not as concerned with having the dumpster in the snow in the same area.
Okay, well, let me make the suggestions that we'll do that. We'll turn that parking lot to a 24-foot aisle. We'll change the landscaping to the 10-foot. We'll try to squeeze that dumpster, those parking spots over as far as we can to give a little more room for the handicap spots. And we'll take the recommendations on the tree and the landscaping. We'll shallow up that, if necessary. I'd hate to put a three-inch piece of granite in there to get that 15-foot rather than that 15, 2.5. Necessary, we'll do it. I'd like to get away
Which
from...
comment is that you're talking about? I'm sorry? To do the granite where? Was that?
Rather than go with the variance for the 15, 2.5, if you really feel it necessary, we'll close that 15, 2.5 curb cut to 15 feet.
Oh, I see, yeah. Because if you have the 15, you're fine. 'Cause
I
don't know how much
it truly is 15, 2.5, though.
Okay.
Would,
I just think if you hit the 16, you're looking for variance.
That was,
And I don't think you want to do that.
yeah, no, that was a misleading
Okay.
typo by the architect, going by the gate size and not the curb size cut.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on that, if I could.
Sure.
This is an existing curb cut that is at that width.
Ben,
Would a variance be required for an existing non-conforming curb cut?
And the assumption was that it was going to be increasing a foot
Uh-huh.
from 15 to 16, which would have necessitated a variance. If it
Stays
is
with what's
maintained as
there.
the same,
Right.
then it wouldn't require a variance.
Okay.
So if you stay with what you have, the 15 too, you're all set.
good. Thanks. First thing tomorrow, I'll get in touch with the traffic engineer. We'll sit down with him. We'll hash that out and give him my concerns and see what he thinks.
So which is your entranceway? Just here through Myrtle Street?
That's it, yep. Yeah, the retaining wall on the 6th Street side goes from about 3.5 feet up to about 9 feet. So there's a retaining wall all on that side of 6th Street. It just wouldn't be feasible to put a second. Plus, we don't even have the room to add another egress to the parking lot. We need every space that we have there.
I know you addressed this earlier, but let me just touch on this one more time, because I didn't catch it all. When we had the comment from the traffic engineer, they mentioned about the aisle being 34 feet and 10 feet wider than necessary. This could reduce the additional, and add additional green space added to the site if desired. So I think you and I talked about that. So one of the questions was, it goes on, and consideration should be given by aligning the driveway with the intersection of Myrtle and Fifth. This would eliminate one intersection on Myrtle, but, so that's why I'm asking.
It wouldn't actually eliminate one intersection, it would add an intersection. You're gonna take that entranceway that's 40 feet up the street, and you're gonna put it right in front of Fifth Street. It's gonna add an intersection.
So
It just doesn't make sense to me. Again, I'm not a
he's asking
traffic
basically
engineer.
then, so what? To cap this curb cut and create another one, a little more equal distance from both Fifth and Sixth Street?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
So he's talking about one intersection of Myrtle and bring the driveway further back from Sixth Street. So,
Yeah, if we
so
did that,
what
we'd
I mean
have,
is a traffic engineer, so he'd want to be more balanced between Fifth and Sixth
yeah.
than where the opening is now.
No. He wants to line up the driveway with Fifth Street, so when you're coming up Fifth Street, it enters right in there. And then we would have to close that other curb cut. There's also a utility pole right there at the end of Fifth Street. If you come up Fifth Street and wanted to put that thing, we'd have to take that pole down, utility pole. So it just doesn't make sense to me to
So
do
you want to
that.
stay with the existing curb cut?
I do.
Okay, I understand now. When I first read it, I wasn't catching it all.
Okay.
I was thinking, that's why I said, where's the extra way in? And by
Yeah.
reading that, okay. So that was like, all right.
If you go up and you take a look at the site, I don't know how many of you drove by there, it honestly, it doesn't make sense to move that entrance over there in line with Fifth Street. None of the neighbors want it there. there's 4 abutters there, there's 2 on one side and there's 2 across the street, each corner of Fifth Street. I've spoke to all 4 of the abutters, and none of them thought it was a good idea to move that, especially the person who would have their dumpster next to their kitchen window.
Okay, I'm not exactly clear on that. Why would moving the driveway entrance make you move the dumpster?
That was one of their suggestions.
Oh, so
The
those are 2
sections-
different suggestions?
Right.
Okay.
To align that they, to put it up there and then line it with the dumpster. You know, who wants to come up Fifth Street and be looking at a dumpster, you know?
The theory, from a traffic engineering perspective, traffic design perspective, is that you're going to have Myrtle Street, and you're going to have 2 conflict points, okay? Place where it intersects with Fifth Street and a place where it intersects with your driveway. And from a traffic engineering perspective, instead of having 2 places where there could be traffic conflicts, there would now be 1 place to be traffic conflicts. This is a very legitimate traffic engineering issue.
Right.
As I see it, the question before the board is an issue of balancing. How serious are these considerations, and how serious are these considerations, and what needs to be weighed more? If this was 200 parking spaces worth of traffic coming out of this driveway, then it would be absolutely clear that it would be very important to have the driveway and Fifth Street lined up to avoid those 2 different conflict points. And if it was only 10 spaces, parking spaces, it would not matter at all. There wouldn't be nearly enough cars coming out of this. Where it is 40-something parking spaces, it's a little bit in the middle. That's the consideration here.
And I understand your point, but I mean, typically, how many people, with 21 units, how many cars are you really going to be leaving at the same time?
Good question. How big are these units?
Pardon me?
Good question.
2
How big are
bedrooms.
these units?
I have 18 2-bedroom units, I have 2 studio units, and I have 1 1-bedroom unit. I mean, typically, the studios, you know, are only going to have 1. So, really, how many cars do you assume are going to be leaving at the same time? Your most volume is going to be at 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning when everyone's going to work, fluctuated when they're coming home. But, you know, it's not like we're putting a shopping mall there or something where you're going to have a lot of traffic through there. And I think typically with the traffic engineer's standpoint and actually looking, I don't know if he actually went through it, I think they kind of keep those guidelines for when they're offset just a little bit. So you have that conflicting turning and whatnot. You don't have this on this site. We're up, you know, over 40 feet from that corner. I mean, there's a lot of room there. I think he might have just been looking at, and again, I shouldn't be saying what he's thinking, but that's my thought on the issue.
Is the people who are here from the neighborhood, is there anybody who lives right there who's intimately familiar with this area?
I'm not sure. I know Anne Marie's been by a couple of times. She was at the site just the other day.
Anne Marie, if I could, I'd like to pick your brain.
I've lived there for over 40
I
years.
spoke to Ann about that, so she's familiar with the
On this particular block?
That's been the same driveway for over 40 years, and the world hasn't come to an end.
So
You come out of that driveway, the way it is now, you're gonna come out onto Myrtle, where there's not that much traffic. Cars here and there, it's a wide street, it's a nice street to cross from 3rd to 6th, so you can get on 6th to hit the lights, because you can't get out 3rd on the bridge anymore. But the problem is, if you make that driveway right across from 5th, now you come out of the driveway, instead of like I come out of the driveway of my house, I'm onto my street, I look left, I look right. You come out of there and you're facing 5th, now you got a 4-way intersection. They're coming this way, they're coming this way, they're coming up, and you're coming out. So now, that's a little thing we don't really need. It's been safe this way, it works. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it. Coming out into where that driveway comes out on a Myrtle now has worked very well for many, many years. Would I move it over by 5th? No. Am I a traffic engineer? No. But I know what Bridge Street looks like, and I didn't do that either. You had a question, sir?
I was wondering about the on-street parking on this block. Is that
It's-
usually
it's-
full, or is there usually some available?
It's busy, but it's not as bad as it is in other parts of the city, right? I know neighbors, if you live in Centerville, you're always worried about street parking, on the street. I live up in Fremont. I have driveway in 2 places in front of my house. My neighbor has 1 spot. My other neighbor has 1 spot, right? That's the way it is, because years ago, before we had many, many cars, they let you put your house kissing close to your neighbor's house. But now, there's a problem. That's a very wide street. That's a good street, Myrtle. Beach is a little bit narrower. Myrtle is a little bit wider. They park on the left a little, not a lot. They park on the right a little, but not a lot. So it's not something I'd be really worried about. There are streets over there I would be worried about. That's not one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
I've been out there about every day for the last 10 days working. Typically, we have about 4 or 5 cars on Myrtle Street, on the streets, on the school street side. Yeah. And that's just about every day, 4 or 5 off-street. But when we went to the neighborhood group, though, one of the biggest concerns was on off-street parking there. They were adamant about not wanting us to apply for variance, because we had talked about keeping the park that's there. We talked about keeping the tree that was there, and there was more concern about off-street parking than there was the need for the park or the need for the tree. I mean, we had a couple that wanted each of them, but pretty overwhelmingly, they wanted our cars parked on our site. And that's one of the reasons why we really don't have any extra room in there. Because otherwise, we were thinking of keeping that tree there. We were thinking of keeping the park, but they didn't want it. We all remember what happened to the Butler School, keeping it open too long. I mean, we've already got buckled floors in there from last year. We had a frozen pipe there last year. We had 6 inches of water in the basement. It's important and crucial to myself, to the city, to the neighborhood that we get this school rolling. You know, it really does not want to see another winter with those windows in the shape they are, and we're not in the spot or have the necessary approvals for us to be, paying for the windows yet at this point.
I think, the project is a good project. The main thing is just trying to work out some minor engineering stuff,
And that's why I'd be
Like when
asking.
most of the lawyers come before us, they say, let engineer fix it, and they're done with it. I mean, that's what they tell us all the time. And I think this is one of those projects that if we tweak the engineering a little bit, you'll be fine. I don't think I think everybody's sounds favorable for it. I mean, we got a lot of good neighborhood support on it. We know the location very well, I used to play basketball up there. My kids played soccer up there for many years, be a good thing for the neighborhood. Just make sure that when we have comments given to us by traffic engineers, city engineers, and planning and development, we just address those issues. So some of the things I think that we're talking about is what the comments that you received. And I think basically if we go back, you said you met with the city engineer, so most of her comments are general in nature, which you have no problems with, right?
No, matter of fact, I had given her she'd given me some suggestions. We had talked over a few of my suggestions, and of course she wants to see it on paper and she wants to see the calculations, but
Yeah.
I think we're in agreement that,
And then she talked about the stormwater, the large impervious areas, where the runoff will be,
yeah,
okay.
grass walls.
Right, so then we get another one from, from the utility, regional water utility, just saying that, the plumbing plans have to be, final inspection has to be given to them as well, in the cross-section. I'm sure you have no problem with that, right?
No, none.
In the location of the dimensions of utilities, including water surfaces, drainages, we've revised and we've submitted, so you'd have no problem with going with that, correct?
Correct. I actually have I'm not sure if you want, but I have a 9x11 of the site plan with the utilities marked on them and whatnot. I wasn't sure if we were going to do any more changes, so I didn't go ahead and get a full-size copy made.
Well, I know you're requesting a conditional approval. What will happen a lot of times, if we do the conditional approval with these types of comments and these, would ask that it be a conditional approval with a new set of plans addressing these, so when we get the new set of plans, before everybody signs off on them, that they're on the plan.
Absolutely. That would be at the next step?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, that,
I mean, what we'd do is, if you have some comments there, if you need more, if we, depending what the board's indication is tonight, that we say you put them on the plan to address them. So if you have some already
absolutely.
done, it would just be add a few more things.
we do. I didn't have a full set size made because I wasn't sure if there's any more
That's okay.
changes and plans.
Okay. Because I think we've addressed everything that we got. The only thing I was, Rich indicated, is usually for something like this, we want to see a letter from the fire department so we can make that conditional if need be. We have to have that one way or another, you know, to make sure that for safety issue, they can get in and get around. You know, most likely, you know, if they addressed it before with the school up there, chances
Yeah.
are they can still get to it. You know, they're gonna look at where your closest hydrants is, whether they can get in, you know, where they're gonna, I mean, at least on here, you know,
Yeah,
they can probably, you know, between Beach Street, Sixth, and Myrtle, they can probably shoot their hoses right from the street.
sure. Yeah, I didn't know there was a requirement. I would have spoken to the fire department and got in touch with them had I known that was,
I'm sure when you submitted your plans, planning and development gave the fire department a copy, right, Joe? Yeah.
yes.
So just be a matter of getting any feedback from them. Then obviously, if they gave us any negative feedback, we'd ask you to go along with whatever their requirements would
Right,
be.
yeah.
Which would be,
And we have to address all of the fire issues at planning at permitting it also.
because what we're gonna have, you're gonna have the sprinkler system in there, I
Yeah,
imagine?
full sprinkler, yeah,
That's the safest way to go, and it's.
absolutely.
It's, cheaper for insurance and
Full
everything
sprinkler,
else.
we're gonna get rid of the on-site fire escapes, which is nothing but an eyesore and a problem for the neighborhood. Again, like I said, we had somebody up there on the roof, 4th of July, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Because on, the ones we got from, planning development, from Joe was with us tonight, was, we addressed the 15-foot wide, we talked about the dumpster, we talked about the driveway width, you know, if we could change that. The other one, the plantings, usually we have no problems, what type of trees you want to work with, we tell you to work with DPD on that. And I think the last thing was you have to have the handicap ramp, which has to be approved, which I know you have to do that.
Right.
So, considering, you know, working with the certain departments, I think, you know, this is something that is doable. The only thing I'd recommend, you know, is, you know, like we talked about, you know, maybe the snow storage to the right, and maybe if you want to keep the dumpster away from the handicap spot. You know, I mean, 'cause I mean, more or less, if you consider, you know, the people coming in to pick up the dumpster, and you're dealing with 2 handicap spots right there.
Yeah.
You know, the average person can move
Well-
along, get away from that, wait a few minutes, where it's a really inconvenience for the handicapped people.
Okay. We can move that.
Okay,
We can
yeah.
put that somewhere else. I mean, it takes up the same amount of parking spaces. The only real, I could have put that anywhere in the parking lot except next to the residential. The only reason why we put that, we just thought that'd be the best spot up out of the way.
Sure.
But I certainly can see your concern having it next to hands, but we'll move those.
Yeah,
I'll find somebody to put, we'll put them in the middle of,
Yeah, I mean,
the 6th Street, corridor there where the parking
you know,
is.
whether you feel, you know, your handicap is, I mean, you want to line it up closest to the entrance ways, right?
Yeah.
So that
Well,
takes-
the reason why the handicap's on the left side is the grade to the building is a lot less on that side. We
Okay.
don't have to, it's almost
do your
street
ramp?
entrance. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I mean, like I say, moving the dumpster, I mean, it has to be screened, so even if you put it, you know, somewhere else, I mean, that way the people with the handicap aren't getting stuck when people come in to move the dumpster.
Sure. We'll find a different spot for it, and we'll submit a new plan for it, and
Especially if they have
we'll
a
get with
van
Joe.
coming in with people like that, I mean, like I said, the dumpster's easy enough to move, so,
Sure, absolutely.
you know, so.
Could I make a comment about the dumpster, as long as you're talking about it? You know, you're really beautifying the lot, and you're gonna have a nice-looking project here when you're done. And you get a dumpster sitting right on the road there, that kind of detracts from the property, I think.
It is on the road, but again, I mean, we're gonna move it, but that grade, that wall that's along
Grade, is
Sixth
that
Street,
why you got that?
yeah, there's a retaining wall there. Like I said, it goes from like about 3.5 feet up to, you know,
Yeah.
over 9 feet
I would
there.
really
So
like-
we were trying to actually, it's another reason why we stuck it up there, because it was the furthest up that grade against that retaining wall. We thought it would hide it the most.
What is the change of grade at that location where the dumpster is? It's a lot closer to 3.5 than 9, right?
It goes from about 3.5 feet, it might even be more than 9. I haven't actually measured the retaining wall on Sixth Street. The furthest end where it intersects with Beach Street, that retaining wall is probably at least 9 feet high.
Right, and I was just visiting the site earlier, and It isn't, there is a meaningful change of grade right there before the school. It's not 9 feet, but it's certainly more than 3. So yeah, the dumpster would be significantly set down from the street at that location.
Yeah, the further you get up, closer to the building, the
completely
higher the
below.
retaining wall is.
Yes, not completely below. It would be, the screening would be poking up a little from that location, but it isn't like it's at eye level.
Yeah, right, no.
What we normally see in these things is a 6-foot stockade fence or an 8-foot?
Yeah, in our thing, we have a 6-foot stockade with privacy slats.
Okay. So what they would look like if it was in its current location would probably be about 3 feet of stockade fencing
Correct.
sticking up at the back of the sidewalk.
Yeah. Other than the handicap spots being next to it, it's the best location for it to hide it. But again, I can see your concern with things, so, I mean, you win one, you lose one, you know, so, I mean, you'll see a little more of the dumpster, we'll have a little more space next to the handicap space still. It's doable for us.
Okay.
And if board members have any further comments? If not, I'll make a motion that we approve with the following conditions. One being that the curb cut on the driveway stay the same for the 15-foot curb cut, whether it was 15 feet or 2 inches, but, so that stays the same. Recommend that you consider relocating the dumpster. And if you do, come back and show us for plans on that. Additional, as we indicated before, for the driveway aisle is the 28 feet. If we could reduce that, I mean, what do we have? Let me take a look. We have it, it's 34 feet. If we could reduce that down to the 24 feet as requested by planning and development, that way it's closer, much closer to the driveway aisle, and also that it will pick up the planting areas, an opportunity to create the landscape, and also provide a greater increased stormwater retention. So if you reduce the area in there from the 34 feet down to the 24 feet, I think it's 3 inches.
I think it was 28 feet.
Okay, I
Wasn't
think
it? Was it
it
20
is, the
28
driveway-
feet, 28
yeah.
feet in the aisle?
Yeah, so I think the board, that we reduced the planting area along Myrtle Street from 5 feet, 8 inches to 10 feet. So make your planting area 10 feet instead of the 5.8.
And, yep.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and then it says it reduced the aisles from 34 feet to 3 inches, okay? So with that consideration, in regards to the type of shade trees and orientation trees, I would suggest you work with DPW on that. I think we addressed the traffic engineer by the parking lot being too wide. The other question I have is that we have, we receive a favorable reply from the fire department. Consider maybe putting the snow storage towards the right, if you're gonna keep the dumpster and the parking and the handicap spaces down that way. You know, maybe we consider about putting the snow storage, because I think you're gonna pick up, you know, where the landscape is, you can pick up some snow storage on the green,
Right.
and that can go right into the grass. Maybe consider putting the snow storage to the right, because as we know, a lot of times when you have that snow, even if you pack it on site for the time being, when it has a tendency to melt, you know, it's gonna melt and refreeze, and sometimes, I'm not sure where your slope is, but whether that goes to it, would that be going towards the handicap spots, because you don't want that?
Tell you the truth, I really don't know. If we put the snow storage on the left on that extra landscaped area, if we kind of push it all that way, those grass walls will
Yeah,
catch a
because
lot,
this way
catch a lot of that
you
water.
can pick up more snow facing Middle Street on both areas,
Yeah, right,
as well as down towards Fifth Street. But I mean, that way, if instead of packing it all up there with the dumpster, the handicap, and the big mile of snow, so that could pick up your snow removal down that way.
correct.
So, and then I'll just say that, go along with the comments that were given to us by the city engineer, which you discussed with her already, which was dated August 27th, 2013, which are basically all general questions, which you said you have no problems with. And, you know, just construction plans must be given, you know, dewatering discharges shown on plans, and just, you know, no disposal into city street for the snow removal. And just to give the new plans as requested by the regional water utility dated August 19th. So basically be the comments by regional.
Yep.
Comments by plan and development. We're changing this, you know, the thing from 38 to 28, which is commented by both planning and development and the city engineer, so that kind of encompasses both of those.
Yep.
We'll leave the curb cut as is, and then, when those corrections are made on the plan, that you submit a new set of plans to us,
Absolutely.
and then,
No plans.
and like I say, it'll be conditional upon the agreement from the fire department. Any negative report we get from the fire department, we'll bring it to your attention. You can come back in and show us how you can address that issue.
Absolutely.
Any board members have any comments or follow-up on the motion that I made?
You covered quite a bit of area, Tom. Did we address the relocation of the curb cut, or you saying that we'll leave it there?
I'd leave it there. I think the main thing was, you know, the main thing is it's gonna stay at the 15 feet. So, you know, Joe said first they thought it was 16, so it's 15. I think the concern that was given by everybody, they're more comfortable leaving the one curb cut as is.
There, yeah.
I mean, it's already existing. We heard some comments from the neighborhood, how they feel that works. I know it was a suggestion. I think if it's already existing there, the main other things we're really doing is on-site. If the neighbors indicate that they think the traffic would flow better that way, I think from Mr. Eby, our traffic engineer, he'd put that more down as a consideration, whereas he was more concerned about the parking lot aisle being 34 feet. So him and Plan and Development agreed to cut it down 10 feet, which I believe the applicant's willing to do.
All right, so
So, I mean, basically, it'd be that we'd addressing all the comments that were given us from all the city departments, except for leaving it open-ended for the fire department, and then have them submit new plans to us.
right.
Okay, so that's the motion I have on the floor. Joe, do you have any questions on what those motions are?
Nope, I think I got everything.
Okay, so I mean, basically, it's the, you know, from the city engineer's
Yeah.
report, planning development's report, I mean, Mr. Eby's report, cutting it down from 34 to 24. I mean, we'll then leave the curb cut at the 15, consider relocating the dumpster. And then we'll pick up the snow removal and question where they want to put the snow and work with DPW for the trees and make sure that the handicap ramp is conforming to the ADR requirements. And indicated a new set of plans to be given to planning and development.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second the motion as made. I very much appreciate Mr. Eby drawing our attention to this issue, and that was an important consideration, the value of lining up the driveway with Fifth Street, and I'm glad we got into it and talked it out. But considering the volume of traffic that will be coming out of this, I don't even think you're going to be using all your parking spaces. I don't think you're going to be close to using all your parking spaces. Given what you've represented to me about the size of the units and the types of the units, I would be comfortable leaving this as is, leaving the driveway location as is, based on traffic situation on Myrtle Street and the reasonably expected volume coming out of that. I think I would second your motion as is.
So motion's made and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none. So we have 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Good luck, sir. We look forward to your new plans.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with your project.
Have a good night.
Thanks for the Neighborhood Association for coming down. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I get a second vote, one for...
Oh, excuse me
so
one second.
One can cover site plan review, one can cover special
We
permit.
need 2 motions, right?
Yeah.
One for the site plan and one for the...
Oh, no, special permit.
Let me just, okay, back up.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. The same conditions? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
regarding the special permit.
Okay.
approval.
Mr. Underwood, can I have your attention for 1 second? I made the motion to approve the site plan, and also that you're requesting a special permit. So the motion was made and second and approved for the site plan, and now at this point in time,
I'll make a motion for approval of the special permit.
because you need two votes, one for the site plan, and one for the special permit.
You're correct.
So now we have a motion made by Mr. Lockhart to approve the special permit. Joe, do you want to second the motion for the special permit as well?
I will second the motion.
Okay, so motion's made and second for the special permit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. So we have 4 in favor and 1 abstention as well. This way we got both, and we're going to bring you back, so.
Excellent, thank you
Okay.
very much. Have a good night, everybody.
That's good.
That's why we have planning staff here to catch us.
That's good, Tom. That was very good. Look it up, look at this. That's better that way.
Use this now. Chestnut.
Oh, that's right. That's a mess. Right, I was. Okay, okay. Let's see, Steve.
Okay, moving along, we have a pre-application session for 142 Chestnut Street. The following individual has requested the planning board to provide a preliminary review of their proposed project, at the above listed address. This is not a public hearing. The planning board will render no decision related to the site plan review, nor guarantees any further decision, whether positive or negative, on any project that receives pre-application review. The applicant is 142 LLC. The applicant proposes to demolish a portion of the existing facility, known as the Tabard House, and convert the remainder of the structure into a 4-unit dwelling. The project also includes the construction of 24 additional dwelling units with access to the site coming from Park Street. The applicant is seeking special permit and site plan approval under sections 11.4 of the City of Lowell zoning ordinance. The parcels in total comprise of approximately 50,628 square feet of land. The area with approximately 42,880 square feet of combined building area and are located in the traditional multifamily zoning district. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. George Theolides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. And I'm here this evening with my associate, George Theodoro. And on this particular matter, we have 2 tonight. So George is here helping me. We're going to each pitch in on this. And then we have Mr. Hammer here, who has actually done the engineering work on both of these projects as well. It's been a while since I've been in his City Hall, and the custodian asked me if I was going to be here till midnight. He wouldn't let me up the stairs if I was going to do that, so I assured him that we wouldn't be here till midnight.
Is that why you said your associate's going to speak?
That's right. Exactly. Exactly, Mr. Chairman. Anyway, I'm going to start off and be brief and just give you, back up a little bit. If you recall, before the summer, months ago, we came to you for an informal over this property at Chestnut Street. Mr. Piccioni is the gentleman who's seated over here to my right, and he's the gentleman who had purchased this property with the idea that he was going to build single-family houses. And I think I told you this before, and when it came to my attention and others, we we told him that we thought that the site was a special site and that it deserved to have something more than single-family houses. And I think if you recall, we mentioned, or I mentioned to him, that this was something that was more appropriate to a townhouse, row house kind of situation like we used to have in the city, and like Louis, I hate to use the words because it's a big Louisburg Square in Boston or whatever, and to his credit, he went right out and looked at Louisburg Square in Boston. Now, I'm not about to tell you that we're going to duplicate Louisburg Square in Boston, but we sold, so to speak, Mr. Piccioni on the idea that he ought to look at this from the brick row house standpoint. Now, I can say, and then when we came here, well, we went to the historic board first, and one of the nice things about the way things are done in the city is that we have some people like Mr. Lockhart who can be found on both boards, and that's very helpful because early on he got to take a look at this project, and Steve Stowell brought him and some more of his people, and we also met with some DPD folks, and we started to develop some ideas for this, and got a lot of very useful suggestions, both from the historic board members and also DPD folks as we were going along on this. My own viewpoint, and my viewpoint doesn't matter, I know, when it comes to voting on a site plan or whatever. When having lived my whole life within less than half a mile of this location, it's always been something that's, shall we say, very familiar and almost important. It's a structure across from Kittredge Park. Kittredge Park is such a vital part of the Belvedere section of the city, a gateway, and it needed to be, I thought, dealt specially, this particular property. Initially, I sort of had, and this is just, not my own idea, but it was my own idea, and a bad idea, which was to leave it like a walled enclave. And then as we developed things, we realized that probably wasn't the right thing to do. But we did we're proposing a different version of it, which is to take down most of the wall, leave enough of it up there so that we can show some of the historic character. But this place that was always kind of almost a foreboding location, I don't think in all my years being in that neighborhood I ever saw a person go in or out of that property. It was very strange. It was always sort of a mystery property. And now we want to open it up. And we want to put in a separate, almost like a mini neighborhood within the neighborhood. So we talked to Matt and we talked to the people at Sullivan and Gavin and Sullivan, and we all sort of did some brainstorming, but most importantly, the folks at the historic board were very helpful with us, because initially we thought the Talbert House, which is the one that very prominently is in the middle, would come down, and just it didn't seem to fit into what we had hoped to do. Then as the process evolved, we realized that the Talbot House, and I think actually it was Mr. Lockhart himself, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, that said that there's a lot of positives to this building, and we ought to make an effort to try and save this if at all possible. So what we did, and we all did a walkthrough and checked it all out. There are parts of the building that are new additions that are more of a dormitory style and whatever, and we don't mind, and nobody minds taking that down, but the real guts of the building and the character and the beauty of it, we're proposing now to save and almost make it a focal point. So building around that and doing the kinds of things that we think we can do there, which is to put a street down the middle and basically put 2 rows of brick row houses, I think is going to make an incredibly nice, you enter from Park Street and go from there. So I'm going to let George and Matthew, we have 2 Matthews and 2 Georges tonight. These 2 guys are the Matthews and the 2 Georges are here. So I'm going to let George and Matthew give you a little more detail. And we're here, by the way, again, it's an evolution. We think we've come a long way. We think that with the, as I said at the outset, with the input from DPD and the Historic Board and others, that we've come up with a great plan. So I'm going to let those 2 explain the rest of it to you, and then we'll all be able to answer questions for you, hopefully. Thanks.
Thank you, Counsel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to go over a couple of some more points that Attorney Elides drew upon with respect to the project, and also to stress the point that we came here and met informally sometime in the spring. We're coming back now. It's a work in progress that we want to make it better. And also, one of the important parts about this project is that it is unique in that it proposes to create a neighborhood within a neighborhood. The present state of this city block, which it is a block. It comprises, Chestnut on one side, Park on the other, and East Merrimack Street on the far side. It's 50,000 square feet. So in the historic district, which is in the Washington Square Historic District, where we plan to create a mini neighborhood there, a neighborhood that is going to not just, is going to enhance the neighborhood. And what we plan on doing there is have the 24 units, new structures. Each of them will have a 1-car garage under. And each one will have ample parking on site. It's proposing to have 58 parking spaces, which meets the requirement. In that, it's not going to be a burden to the neighborhood. Parking will be completely on site. Also, what we propose is to have the private drive, which I might add, in speaking with Mr. Piccioni in the development process, which will be done with porous pavement, which is, again, going to relieve and assist with the drainage situation over there. And this private drive that we have is going to be beautified by large shade trees on one side completely, and we are also going to have sufficient green space around in this area. And you can take a look at some of the plans we have with respect to the redevelopment of the Talbot House. We gave that some room to breathe. We put sufficient green space around it, and that's part of the discussions that we had both with the Historic Board and with DPD. I also want to point out right now what this site looks like. You know, Mr. Elides touched upon it, and there is this large privacy wall around the entire site. You can't look into it at all. At some points, it's over 10 feet. And on the East Merrimack Street side, it's unsightly. This is the upper left-hand corner right there. You'll take a look at it as it currently exists. We would describe that as a canal wall. It's just this brick the stone that is used, that's put together with a type of cement, and it's all falling apart. It's been deteriorated through frost action from the freezing and thawing through the winters, and it's falling apart, and it's completely unsightly. For the people who live across the street on East Merrimack Street, they're looking into that wall. And what we propose to do around this development is to put in a wrought iron style fence with brick pillars. And in doing that around there, it will open up the sight lines from both looking into the development, and those will be able to look out of the development. And you can see how it ties in historically, that we've met with the Historic Board in the In the photograph that you see in the lower left-hand corner over there, the one that's nearest to me, it ties in with some of the existing design that's there in front of the original historic Talbot House. I also want to point out, with respect to this development over here, that we're going to have it done in brick. It's going to be staggered so that it's going to have, again, very inviting sight lines. And the entrances are going to be recessed all along on all sides, and that's going to have an extremely, publicly inviting entranceways, which we think are important to enhance the neighborhood. And this neighborhood is going to be serviced by one of the prettiest parks that we have in the city, which is Kitteridge Park, and which we believe is underutilized at the present time. And this will serve to the residents to utilize that park. And also, we think that standing in that park and looking over there at this development will be a beautiful looking development. And some of the other amenities that we plan to put in there is we looked into preserving some. There's a beautiful mature tree over there. We can't preserve that. It's I believe the arborist. We looked at it with the historic board. It's a cucumber magnolia, I think, if I remember correctly. It's a beautiful mature tree, but we can't preserve that at all. That has to go. But we did meet on site with members of the historic board. We did, during the winter, walk through the Talbot House, and we are going to preserve that. The Talbot House would consist of 4 one-bedroom units, and the remaining units are all going to be 2-bedroom units, all with 1 car under and additional parking in the driveway. And again, as I said before, the parking is going to be completely satisfied on site. So if we have any other questions at all, and any suggestions with respect to the plan, or we'd be happy to entertain those.
Thank you. Excuse me. You're up, Matt.
I think I'd like to. I don't know if this is working.
If you have the green button, it should be working. If not, you can grab one of the council ones and just push the button. Yeah, can you carry that? If that green little light on below it, it should be working.
So, one thing I wanted to emphasize is the look of the existing building as it is now. You'll see here you have the brick pillars, the wrought iron, and then there's small retaining wall, brick retaining walls that help make the transition as you go down in grade.
Matt, is that facing Chestnut Street there? The one you just showed on the bottom left?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
In fact,
yeah.
this is the Talbot House here.
On Chestnut Street, yeah?
Yep. And what happens is the Talbot House, we feel as though that was all original to when the house was originally constructed. It had the wrought iron, the pillars, and the landscaping, and the dwellings. And then what happened is that it transitioned to a privacy wall that encompassed an entire private yard area, which currently
It goes down Chestnut onto,
is this whole area
Park
right
Street,
here.
right.
So it varies from 6 to 12, 14 feet that went all the way around.
Yeah.
And that went all the way around here before the convent was built, later on. So one of the primary focus points of the entire project has been keep this look and transition it around the entire property, knowing that these small walls down here actually act as retaining walls around the entire property. And what happens is we're going to continue those pilasters, wrought iron, pillar, all the way around. And then when we get here, we're going to maintain the existing brick wall that's on the Park Street side. Okay? This is Park Street here. There'll be a saw-cut entrance through the wall, and then this high-quality wall will remain, except for the entrance portion. We're gonna wrap it around the corners so that it ties into the wrought iron transition here. This elevation here is a 2-scale elevation of Chestnut Street. That's a true representation of the wall wrapping around here, the retaining wall portion, which helps with the grading of the entire site relative to groundwater, drainage, the grading around back, and transitioning the grades throughout the entire project. And then you have the wrought iron above it, pillar, stairway, covered entrances, pillar, brick, wrought iron, and it runs the whole way through the project. So essentially what you have is this look throughout the entire project, running along all of East Merrimack and Chestnut Street. So this beautiful look that's in front of the Talbot House, now you're gonna see around the entire project. If you go over to East Merrimack and take a walk around, you'll actually see roots growing inside of what we're calling the canal wall. And it's starting to spall, freeze and thaw, and now it's breaking out from the inside. So the integrity of that wall is completely compromised right now. So I just wanted to give you a little outline of that. This was the original rendering, and we would have done a new rendering. It was recommended by Aaron, don't do a new rendering. This look at the tower house is going to remain per this rendering, taking the shutters off of this rendering, so there will be no shutters on this project. But this style, this look here will all remain the same, consistent around the entire project, as these townhouses are represented on the original rendering that we did for this when we showed you this back in May, I think, or April. There's also going to be sidewalks, which are also going to be porous, by the way, that are going to bring people from within the project out to 2 points along Chestnut Street, so they'll have access to Chestnut Street and Kittredge Park through these walkways. So this project is really set up to allow the public to completely circulate through the project, either coming off of Chestnut or coming in off of Park. And everything else, Mr. Theodore told you, so I'm not going to repeat.
Matt, when you were here last time, I know you gave us 2 different plans, and I know the other one was a little different, and I know that you talked about keeping the streetscape the same in the Talbot House, but I think it had to do with something with the interior. I think you're gonna try to block something off instead of open up, but
I'll tell you what happened.
Down here.
We had townhouses that connected all the way to the
Right.
side here.
Okay.
Something.
And when we met, in fact, Adam Backey was part of a meeting that we had.
Just hold it to the mic there so people listen. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Backey was actually part of a meeting that we had, and he had a great idea. And that was to give the Talbot House some more breathing room around it. And that's why we took the units out here, and then we suggested we move the units over here.
That's what it was. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what was the change, because last time you said 2, and this was the better of the 2. I'm just trying to remember what the other one was. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing that we did was, we had an arborist go out to the property and actually look at the trees that are located in this area right here, and the significant tree that's right next to the house itself has 3 disease points. It has what they call trunk rot. I don't exactly know how these things get created, but there's a trunk rot, there's rock coming in from above the tree, so a branch must have snapped off. Water's been coming in the top, and now it's starting to rot from the top. And if you go up to it, you'll see little holes in the bark, and something's been, there's an infestation in the bark itself. So we're gonna have an arborist report provided as well to DPD. And then there was also some hemlocks in here, and they're coming up at angles, and they're problematic as well. But that was one of the reasons why we took those units out here, to try to preserve all that. And it did make sense overall to really have this building stand out without the townhouses too close to it.
I know you talked about the streetscape on Chestnut, the wall on Park Street and East Merrimack. What about on the far left part of the plan? What's gonna be, you have a buffer there before it hits, all the way over the other end? Yeah, is from there down, all the way down? Keep going,
All this is gonna be green space.
okay.
Yeah. There's a landscape plan included in the package as well.
Is there gonna be a fence there, some sort of barrier?
Well, right now, there's a wall fence there now, and all that's gonna stay.
What is that? How tall is that? And what type? Is that the brick?
That's the brick wall in portions, and then another portion is a fence.
What type of fence?
I believe it's a stockade, but I can't tell you definitively what fence type that is.
Am I missing something on your plans? I don't see on any of these that wall you're keeping along the Park Street side. It looks to me like you have the brick wall with the wrought iron that you were explaining, and then it just sort of ends along both East Merrimack and Chestnut. Am I missing that?
This existing wall is gonna remain, except for a curb cut through the wall.
Cut right through the wall,
Am I missing that? Is that on here?
It's not detailed clearly on the plan, Joe,
Okay.
but
It's a special permit.
that's the way this is set up. And what we do show is on this elevation, that wall coming around.
So that's how big it is. And you don't have an elevation drawing from the Park Street side?
I don't, but what I do have is actual photos.
Mm-hmm.
And these photos show the terracing. This is coming, it comes down in grade this way.
Yes.
This is showing the step terracing. And then, these two sections are gonna be removed, the curb cut. There'll be saw cut faced in brick, and then there'll be a transitional granite element to match in with the other pillars that are gonna be incorporated into the project. We can provide some more detail, but the elevation is right here in this photo.
The elevation on the other side of the wall is about halfway, the ground is about halfway up the wall?
This ground here,
On the inside, is that
Oh, on
serving
the
as a
inside,
retaining
it's-
wall at all?
it's at this grade here.
It's, okay, it says along Park Street, that's not a retaining wall at all, that's just a wall.
It's not a retaining wall.
Okay.
It's just a privacy decorative wall.
So now, how far up the first story will that come? Looking at let's set this elevation plan, will it be like those buildings on the,
It's gonna be similar to this.
okay, so it'll be almost up to those first windows?
Yep.
That's what, okay.
So this is to scale, Joe, right here.
Okay. That Park Street side is really what worried me the most, because it appears from your drawings that what it's going to be is not these fronts, but the sides of two townhouses. And I don't see, that neither of those, that what faces towards Park Street, neither of those are designed to appear as fronts. They look like they're just the side of townhouses. And where we don't have this, where we don't have the elevation drawing, it isn't going to look like what we're seeing here with the doors and the windows and the steps going up and whatnot. It will be a side. The sides of townhouses can really be problematic. We've got some ugly sides of townhouses in this town.
And I think part of what's really significant about the project is that the front of the project there on Chestnut Street and how it is going to look from Kitteridge Park looking in. I think, think about balancing it a bit, about how beautiful that is going to look. And, I understand what your comments are, and we can discuss that and talk about it from a design point of view. But I really think that from looking in from Kitteridge Park to the development along Chestnut Street, that itself is going to be one of the focal points of this.
It certainly will, and I
Have to throw my 2 cents
get
with
to that as well, and I'd very much like to hear Mr. Lockhart on that.
Joe. You're right about the sides of the buildings, and as a result of one part of this planning process, I myself went up to Lawrence Street to see the brick buildings that were done up there, which in my opinion look awful on the sides without any brick on them. So Mr. Piccioni agreed that he would make sure there was going to be brick on the sides of both buildings. So I think that should help that a little bit, and maybe even if we incorporated some window kind of treatment as well, so that I know what you're saying. When you look in, you're going to see something much more inviting than just clapboard. In this case, it's going to be Duraplank, I believe, on the inside, but not there. So we are going to try to do something as far as that goes on the brick side.
That, having toured this site and sat through 2 historic board hearings similar to what we're doing here tonight, I know this project pretty well. From an historic board standpoint, I have to say that, the look of the project is very nicely done and will blend into the neighborhood very nicely. I think that's the consensus of the board in general. However, there is additional work to be done there in terms of design review, where you do go through materials and do go through the details of this project that has not been done yet. That still needs to be done. So
Correct.
Those issues can be
And we've
resolved
been
through historic board staff.
We've been talking to Steve about that, and we're getting ready
So when you
to
get
be
there, I'm
meeting
not
with more
concerned
of
that that will be
the historic.
an issue. I do want to comment, I received an email today, I think the rest of the board probably did too, from Steve Gendron, who is not here tonight, he couldn't make the meeting. And he just wanted to let you know that he was concerned about the density of the project from a site plan view, which is our jurisdiction, of course. So that should be part of the record. And looking at it myself personally, I really like the project. I think it'd be a great addition up there, but 24 units might be a little dense. I'd like to see maybe that reduced if possible, and just create a little more additional green space within the project. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Shea, go ahead, please.
To what Mr. Lockhart said, my understanding is and again, I agree, I think everybody is pleased with the direction you go in with the general look of the project. And really keep preserving the architectural integrity of the Talbot House. I understand that you're looking for variance for the setbacks. And I will say, I did walk the site, and I actually have a picture of my measuring tape with the brick building across the street, and that's only 10 feet to the sidewalk across the street. So lo and behold, that's in keeping with what's there.
Look at this technology.
Which I was surprised, because I thought that the 10 feet, but sure enough, it's in keeping. But I have to agree as well, and this is the second pre-application hearing you come to us, and I think that was communicated as far as the density in the lot area per dwelling unit. You're basically doing 2 times the amount of units on the site that the zoning would allow. So, and especially the purpose of the pre-application hearing is, I don't think we've given you much critical comments as far as anything else, really, other than the density of the development on the site. And my question to you, even from the last pre-application hearing, and now you have coming before us here tonight, in your design, have you given any consideration to that?
Consideration, I'm sorry.
To having fewer units?
We have. Understanding that this is a pretty expensive proposition, and I know the board hears this all the time, but the fact of the matter is that in order to in order to entice, shall we say, Mr. Piccioni, or give him the idea that it was worth it to him to spend the money, we really did sit and talk quite a bit about the number of units. We'd prefer, and economically for him, the deal works with that number of units. I'm not going to say that with 1 fewer or 5 fewer or whatever it does or doesn't. I don't know exactly the numbers, but obviously we as a team have looked upon this thing, and I think we haven't actually, this is an interesting point. George made this point when we were talking about this earlier today. In all the discussions that we've had during this entire period of time with all of the people in all of the various aspects of this thing, this board's the only board that really raised the issue of the density. And I can understand that, why.
We're
because
the only
you-
one that makes the decision on that. So.
Well, of course, I understand that, but I'm saying,
Keep that in perspective, Mr. Lighties.
Interestingly, no one said, oh my God, you're just putting too many places in there. I think it fits. I would make that argument. I hope that we can continue with that. If it doesn't, then I guess we have to sit down and see what it is. But it really is important to the developer to be able to look at it from that standpoint.
I mean, typically, you understand when variance or project is approved, allowing the increased density from the zoning, it's typically when we're talking about the reuse of an existing building, and we understand that, because then you're looking at, to meet the lot area per dwelling unit, you end up with a 5-story building with 1 unit on each floor, and obviously it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But when we've got a site that's pretty much, other than the Talbot House, this is, it's very rare to have this much land available to put new construction. Matter of fact, in a fairly well-developed area of the city. So, obviously it's a key site, a beautiful view to Kittredge Park from there, and love the view on that. I think on East Merrimack, you're talking, it really is quite a row of, even if you thought of breaking that up to be similar to the other side and eliminating some units, but just to kind of break some of those units up. So you've got creating a little bit more. As a matter of fact, if wrought iron I think is a great feature to open up the site, but you basically have a brick wall in the form of all those units along East Merrimack. So, to really break that up, similar to what you've done on Chestnut, I think would really add to the aesthetic value of that entire site as well. And it would help to at least cut down slightly on that density and work towards the spirit of, we're not going to get, the lot area per dwelling unit, although I can't speak for my board members, but you're basically talking nine units on the site if we did that. I understand that that's,
Right.
We're probably not looking at something like that, but at least somewhere in keeping with the spirit of that.
Well, I agree. The interesting part of it is if you stop and look at what's around it, it's pretty dense, especially across the street, East Merrimack Street, et cetera. So it's not like we're putting a whole bunch of people, units, all of a sudden, and squeezing them into an area that is not otherwise densely populated, but it is in fact densely populated in that particular section of Belvedere, of Nesmith Street, et cetera. So I hear you, I understand that, and I can see where the board you're confronted by those kinds of issues on a regular basis, and you're obviously much more sensitive to that than we or other laymen who just look at a project as a whole. And so I guess I can just say we want to continue to advocate for that, and let's see what happens, for now anyway, and we're going to try to prove that we need it and that it doesn't hurt.
And one question that I need to be reminded, is this rental or
Rental.
condo?
Rental,
Rental?
right.
So what do you need, a special permit for the land dwelling unit? Is that what the special permit?
Special permit for the road, the length of the driveway.
Length of the
Oh,
driveway.
for driveway?
Yeah.
to the two.
Variance.
You're familiar with that situation,
Oh,
Mr.
Joey?
Chairman.
Oh, good, yeah.
Peoria?
I'd like to add, Mr. Fischett,
As the land court tells, it doesn't matter what happened on one site. If we've issued 4 before, that means there's no precedent.
Make sure the fire department sees it then.
We've been told that too, so, but, okay, for the length of driveway, is the special
Length of
permit you're looking for?
driveway.
Okay. So then you'd also look for what the, for the dwelling units that Mr. Fischett was talking about? And what's the variance that you'll need?
Pardon me?
What's the variance that you're gonna require from the zoning board?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear you.
Do you need a variance as well?
Yeah,
George,
we need variances for dimensional, for setback, side yard, and we also need a special permit under, for use under Article 12 from the planning board.
Any of the board members have any more questions, or? Oh,
yeah, Mr. Fischett, I just wanted to add, I apologize, Ms. Lena, I thought you were done speaking at the time that I spoke. I can say that aesthetically, along East Merrimack with the pillars, the brick, and the wrought iron will remain the same regardless of the number of units aesthetically, just from the streetscape itself. I know that the Park Street side will be the only side that'll have an entire brick wall, which, Mr. Boyle, that was something that the Historic Board wanted to try to maintain in terms of trying to keep as much of what was quality wall as they could. And that's why that ended up remaining existing the way that it is. I don't think it would be an issue to take that and continue that wrought iron and brick around.
Oh, no, that was
Park
not where
Street.
that was not where I was going with that. When I brought up that viewpoint from Park Street, the elevation from Park Street, that was not where I was going.
Okay.
I actually came in here expecting to argue for more preservation of existing wall. I don't think the canal stone wall look is ugly, but you've convinced me that
Yeah, go
it's
take
not
a
in
look
good
at
condition.
it. We've really taken a look at it pretty closely, and what you'll find, if we start to cut into that wall, now we don't know the integrity of after you cut into the wall, and there's actually roots that are growing horizontally within the wall, and you can see how the wall's popping out.
I'm sold.
It's just, so anyways, but I just wanted to kind of better understand the scale from Park Street. Are you looking for more detail on what the end unit will look like?
You know,
The elevation.
I don't have a design in mind. What I have are some design principles. The principle I have in mind is that that should not look like a side, and it should not look like a rear. I wanted to actually go on in a little bit more depth about that, because that principle, it's also one that goes directly to the street. At one point you called it a street. I think most people would refer to this as a driveway, but that kind of depends on how you're going to build it, what it's going to look like. Is it just going to be pavement laid down on the ground? Is it going to be something that's like a street? Is it going to be something that's like a driveway?
The drive
Something
itself?
that's like an alley. I think that's an important aesthetic consideration. If it looks like, you're talking about Louisburg Square, and if it looks like a little Boston-type alley street that comes off a street, that would be very different than if it's a driveway.
No, this is gonna look like a
The whole thing needs
street.
to tie together.
Yeah,
And in addition to the question about the driveway, there's the question about what the building behind there looks like. Attorney Eliades generously offered that it would look like a blank brick wall, perhaps a brick wall with some windows in it. I'm questioning the very idea of it looking like a side. And maybe I'm questioning the very idea of it being a side. Everybody on this board understands why row houses are appealing to developers, because from an engineering standpoint, an architectural standpoint, and a construction standpoint, it's very economically efficient to just be able to do the same thing 24 times, one after the other. From a planning board and from any design review board standpoint, that's not a compelling argument at all. We're talking about density, and we're talking about lot areas per dwelling unit. And on the end of each of these rows, particularly the very long row, you have 2 of your regular townhouse designs. Every unit in this that's proposed in this project, except for the Talbot House, is the same townhouse design. And I understand why that's very appealing from a development standpoint, but doing so leaves us with sides facing Park Street. It could be possible to come up with a project which, yes, has your rows of houses along, but then when it gets to the end there, there's something else. There's some sort of structure. Your townhouse is attached to the back of something that faces towards Park Street. And maybe those aren't your regular exactly the same townhouse projects. Maybe it's a more interesting choice out of the architecture plan book from which townhouses often come that addresses a specific situation like this. Maybe this is a way to reduce the dwelling unit number without actually reducing the amount of development, replacing 2 townhouse units on each of these rows with a single DU, but it's a larger, more appealing, and in fact higher sales price DU, more interior space, more bedrooms, whatever, which could perhaps even take that Talbot House look and apply it elsewhere on the lot, so that it's not just the Talbot House plus 24 of exactly the same townhouse units. I think that's I'm thinking out loud here. Again, I'd like to emphasize what I'm talking about here are design principles. And the design principle is I don't think it should be a side that faces the street.
I'm hearing you, and you know, the funny thing is, I would say, as much as any part of the design and development aspect of this thing has been discussed and kicked around, the area you're talking about was probably talked about more than anything else. I mean, we once, if you recall, I think the early plan, as the chairman pointed out, we had a couple of plans, and if you recall, one of them had a cul-de-sac kind of thing with an interesting, we even talked about landscape and a fence and things like that. Some people have talked about a parking garage. I wouldn't want a parking garage there. That would be awful, in my opinion. But we've kicked around a lot of different things. But it's a point well taken. Let us take a look at it. That's why we're here. We're here to listen more than advocate at this point.
And one final design principle that I'd like to bring up is, what is the interior space going to be like? The interior space between these buildings, where you have your driveway, street, whatever. Because the reason that would be particularly important is that you have 2 units here which are only in that interior space, don't have a front outside of the project. And so what is their front going to be? What are they going to be looking at? Are they going to be looking at the alley behind a building? And that's what it will be, because that's not something that's particularly special.
Well, I'll let Matt speak to it, but as you can see, we certainly plan on putting a whole bunch of trees up and a lot of nice landscape, so that we're doing a real nice streetscape is what I think I can say to you. So, but obviously, we're going to be sensitive to that, and certainly the folks at DPD that we've dealt with up to this point have made it clear that that's an important element to this whole project too. So when we start getting down to the nitty-gritty and like Mr. Lockhart said, start getting into those kinds of particulars, what brick and what are the various elements we're going to use, I think you're right. I mean, we have to look and see what we're going to incorporate into all of that.
If you're going to, yes, if you're going to have interior units that are only inside there, then the inside there needs to be designed differently than if it was just the back of everything.
Everyone's going front to back, so that isn't a problem. But the fact of the matter is, we've thought of this as a street, so that those people who are driving in there are coming to the front of their house as well as, more so than they're going to be coming to it from the other side, because they're going to, most people are not going to park on Chestnut or Park or East Merrimack. They're going to drive into their underground garage or behind it. but they're also going to be looking at their house, and
Yes.
obviously, we want it to look good, too.
Good, good. I'd like to hear that. Here in Lowell, you know this as well as anybody. We actually live on our streets. They aren't just the pavement that gets us to our garage. We have our porches, we have our trees, and that's an important space. We were just talking about that last time when we talked about the open space plan. And to hear that you are thinking in terms of that and of what your street is going to be as a place, that's reassuring. That is something that is a direction I want you to think in.
Great.
That's great for that input. I'm just going to ask a couple questions, and so I think there were two separate issues that you were speaking with. One is the end of these units here and how they interact or are looked at when you're on Park Street is one of the issues, and to have those not look like end units, that's one of the questions, correct? Are you thinking like decorative bow windows coming out of the end of those units to give it more depth in terms of the profile of the end unit? Is that what you're thinking, or?
Oh, I'm
I just
thinking
trying
that
to get-
people who are much better than this at me should give you these suggestions.
I was just curious as
Yes,
to
I
what
am
was in your
thinking
head
about
when you
deta-
were
I-
saying that, because it is the corner of the unit, and I just was curious if you had something in mind.
One option is to have really, really good sides, which are sides, but which are done really well with the awareness that these sides are not just facing the side of the next house, but are addressing the street. And another way to think of this is to go all the way back to the design and make them not sides, make them fronts, like these beautiful fronts that you have on these other townhouses.
I just wanted a
But
clarification
yes, I
on that.
want you to keep in mind that addressing the street from those facades is just as important as addressing the streets, as addressing Chestnut Street and East Merrimack Street.
Okay.
That is a point that's relevant to the design of your buildings. That's a point that's relevant to the cut in the wall. That's a point that's relevant to the design of your street. Okay?
Good.
We don't want that to look like the back door.
Sure, I just
Okay.
wanted to get a little clarification on that. And then your other suggestion on the interior unit is possibly making that look like an individual home?
Those two interior buildings, I don't know if I have a suggestion for you. I just have a
Just curious
concern.
if you had something in
My
mind.
concern here is that something should be the front, and the approach that these people have to their home should be, walking into their front doors should be as attractive for them and as humane a design as it is for people walking into the front doors on Chestnut Street and East Merrimack. It's about that interior space, and to a certain degree, but not nearly as much. It's also about those units having fronts. It's not as important that those fronts be like the ones along Chestnut and Merrimack
Yeah,
and Park,
we'll put
but,
some thought
you
into
know,
it.
it shouldn't be like there's nothing that is the front.
Okay, I just wanted some clarification on that. I do think that the interior units, we're gonna have a nice streetscape, porous pavement with the mature trees coming into the project, so it's not gonna look like an alleyway, all landscaped coming in the entire entrance. And now looking at those interior units, looking out from those units, they're gonna enjoy the benefit of all the green space and the restored Talbot House. So they're gonna have a different perspective on the project from their units relative to the breathing room that we've given the restored home there. But
Okay.
we will put some thought into your comments on that, too.
And one last point that I thought was really nice is the way you preserved that little meditation area. You're keeping
Yeah.
the wall.
Yeah,
There's a low brick wall, you keep that low brick wall?
we're keeping that entire, it's a retained patio space there.
Excellent.
And we're maintaining that entire space. It's in more detail on the grading plan.
And there's a walkway along it, so it will actually be something that is accessible and seems accessible and
Sure.
seems like a space to use for everybody who lives in the project?
Yes.
Excellent. The- Getting it, I noticed that you don't show on your planting plan trees in that space or near that space around the Talbot House, or near that meditation area, and you said you have to lose that beautiful tree because it's diseased, and that's a shame. I don't know which way to go on that, but I know it's something that should be thought about.
Yeah, and we've spoken with DPD that we're going to work with the landscape architect, as well as have try to relocate a lot of the existing vegetation that's in the gardens and everything around the property as well.
You know, I should tell you, I'm not usually this demanding and fussy on projects, but you're asking for twice the dwelling units per lot area. So I really do feel like we should ask for the moon. Twice.
Excuse me?
Twice the dwelling units per lot area.
Mhm.
It would really take a lot to support twice. That's all I have.
If I may just for consideration, and just looking at this plan, is if you considered along East Merrimack as making 3 groups of 4 units, and basically dropping 2 units, but then actually breaking it up, a group of 4, some green space, group of 4, green space, and a group of 4. Just ask that for consideration. And I think, you know, what Joe is, and we've lamented over this, even with neighborhood plans, we did this in Pawtuckaville, we drove around looking at buildings, but, you know, density, design over density, and becomes the, you know, what's effective and what isn't, and, you know, can you overcome density with design, and certainly, you know, from a functionality standpoint is one thing, and then from just the overall design, and, you know, I agree with Attorney Elides had mentioned that, you know, the neighborhood is densely populated, but again, you look at East Merrimack, those homes aren't all connected for that stretch. I mean, there's some breaks, and, I mean, that gives you the perception of open space as well as having those breaks. So, again, I just, this isn't in the middle of the downtown where we're building brownstones, or, you know, it's really on the cusp of the residential, you know, even heading into the single-family home. So, again, you've got a great site here, and I think it's a great project. Again, that's why you're coming before us for pre-application, is give some consideration to those thoughts. Thank you.
The walkways that you have on either side of the Talbot House, you know, the circulation into and outside that interior, that's a really nice feature. What Jerry is talking about, would he allow you to do that same thing on the East Merrimack Street side, and that would really enhance the project.
Yeah. Break it up.
Great, thank you.
Any further comments? No? Okay. You set for a certain date to come back, or?
We are marked up to come back on September 19th for a public hearing. So we have a lot to think about between now and then.
Good luck, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
They could, with really careful attention, they could overcome that really good design job. But it is a problem. They don't, they could just do nothing. They could do 4 sides of townhouses, 4 sides of townhouses, and 2 backs of townhouses. Do this right now.
The way to do it is to turn them this way. So that the driveway is going
And have these be fronts over here?
front here and here.
Who's next?
We make their front over here.
See, yes, and if they're doing that,
They would share
put the fronts on the sides here. If they're looking at some sort of design like that, that could take care of your problem down here too, fronts on the sides.
Oh, boy. Yeah, yeah, it's tough. Those dimensions. That's it.
Okay, moving along, we have another pre-application session, pre-application session for 812 Gorham Street. The following individual has requested the planning board to provide a preliminary review of their proposed project of the above listed address. This is not a public hearing, and the planning board will render no decision on the pre-application plan. This is, the applicant is the Butler School LLC, a definitive subdivision plan of 58,683 square foot property located on 812 Gorham Street, and site plans of Lot 1 comprising of 26,360 square feet of property, and Lot 2 comprising of 23,914 square feet of property. The proposal includes extension of the right-of-way of Newhall Street from Livingston Street to Gorham Street, creating 2 new commercial lots. The project also includes the construction of a 9,140 square foot retail building with associated parking and landscaping areas on Lot 1, and a 7,380 square foot retail building with associated parking and landscaping on Lot 2. The site is located in the traditional mixed-use zoning district. May we hear from the applicant, please?
For the record, George Theolides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the developer. This is the Butler School, I assume you all know that, but or I guess I should say this was the Butler School. There is no longer any Butler School. And I don't think anyone's crying about that. It was quite a nuisance, an attractive nuisance, as they say, most recently. When the developer came to see me and told me that he was interested in placing a bid on the property, he liked the property, and just had the sense that something good could be done there, he asked me if I could recommend somebody to help him out, a consultant on the land use side of things. And I said, well, I could probably do a shore-to-shore, ocean-to-ocean search for him, as we do quite often in Lowell to find people. And son of a gun, I came up with Stephen Jonkus, who's our land use consultant, and that's why you saw him slip into the council chambers a little while ago. And Stephen is very much responsible for putting this package together and getting the developer interested, and also making the modifications necessary so that when the bid was put in, I think probably, and I know, I don't have to say I think, I know the biggest driving force to the city council choosing this project over one other bidder was the fact that we agreed and thought that it would be good to put a road right down, I won't say down the middle, but connecting Newhall, which coincidentally is an old stomping grounds of Mr. Jonkus's, connecting Newhall with Gorham Street. He thinks I'm picking on him, I'm sorry. I'll get more serious. Anyway, and as you can see from the plan, that's exactly what we've done. Once the bid was accepted and all acceptable, then they get to work on trying to put together what might be done there. Initially, there was some talk about the possibility of finding, we hoped, a national retailer, maybe fast food, maybe drive-through kind of thing or whatever. Unfortunately, most of the people, and Steve can speak to that, who have been approached up to this point haven't shown that interest. The good news is, however, that he's currently speaking with a couple of national companies in the retail business, and I'm not at liberty, and I don't think Steve is at this point, to divulge just who that is, but we're cautiously optimistic that maybe we can pull this off. So from the outset, when this thing first got developed and my client was the successful bidder from that point on. I was a little busy doing a few other things at the time. So once again, I called on Mr. Theodoro to do the bulk of the work here, and Matthew was employed as well to do the work. So I'm going to just take the back seat on this one as well and let those two fellows give you more of an explanation of just what's there, and Steve and I are also available to answer whatever we can on that, and I thank you very much.
I think from what you see of the plan right here, we are putting in the new road, the new Hall Street extension, and that again is going to be done. It'll be the first road in the city that is going to be constructed with porous pavement. Again, we're all excited about it, and the engineering office is excited about it as well. And this is significant, the addition of this street here, because it's going to open up the whole area on the other side of New Hall Street. What we propose to do here, as you can see, is to have on either side 2 retail establishments. And we have worked again with DPD in setting up the site. And it's important to us and from the meetings that we had with DPD to have the front entrances of the buildings for the retailers that we're working with on the New Hall Street extension. The retailers that we have been working with want these site views from coming down both sides of Gorham Street, which will be very attractive to their buildings. The entrances are not going to be on Gorham Street. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So that's both important to the project, both important to the proposed national tenants that we have as well. And we have worked out with DPD how we're going to make our deliveries in this area on both of these lots. And I'll leave Matt to come up and talk about some more of the technical parts of the plan.
So New Hall Street's here. And the original proposal for the RFP was to make a roadway, right-of-way that would connect Ellsworth Street to the entrance here and then connect to New Hall Street. So this is a proposed right-of-way. It's proposed as public. The right-of-way will be accepted by the city after it's constructed. Originally, we were going to propose all the normal things that you would find in a city road with catch basins and drain manholes, and we were going to facilitate the drainage on the individual parcels originally. And now this roadway will be the first public road in the city that will be designed as a porous paved roadway. So that came after our initial submission. We then revised the plans to incorporate the new drainage design. That's why there's another plan set coming through the initial submission. This is going to be a lot that's going to be created here, which is lot 1, which will be 26,360 square feet. And then an additional lot will be created here, which is 23,914 square feet. So they're fairly well balanced with the roadway. So everything's working out naturally with the way that the subdivision is being created. Looking at the proposed development, there's existing sidewalks here on Gorham Street. You'll come into what we're calling New Hall Street Extension, is the name of this street. And there'll be sidewalks coming off of the existing sidewalk network system and carrying down both sides of the proposed roadway. Entrances will be located here, to lot 1, with an entrance opposite of that intersection coming into lot 2, which will be in here. This here in orange is the proposed retail building, which is 9,180 square feet, which is here. And what we've proposed here is a landscaped plaza to create a nice entranceway transitioning from Gorham Street into the project, giving nice storefront visibility with traffic on Gorham Street, as well as coming in on Newhall Street with a landscaped area with a little connecting walkway here, so that there's full pedestrian accessibility to the front of the building from Gorham Street and Newhall Street. Also, as part of this, there's going to be, benches in this plaza area, and we just feel as though that with this building, we can create a nice space here and beautify the whole front of this building. As well as, we're going to have a proposed flagpole here in this landscaped area here, and then this landscaped area around the perimeter of the parking area. Come in here, there's a parking area here with a loading and unloading area here. Parking spaces here, handicap space with a ramp, 9 spaces here, and then 6 spaces and 6 spaces here with full maneuverability for loading and unloading, and it far exceeds the amount of required parking that would be required. The required parking would be 11 spaces, and this has 27 spaces. And there's a significant amount of landscaping shown around here. Ample snow storage area around the project. And we're also gonna have an area dedicated towards the end of this parking area. If in fact we get a lot of snow accumulation, we'll dedicate an area on the parking area itself for snow storage. Shown in yellow are crosswalk areas here, here, and here, and across here to make sure there's crosswalks for all the transition points from the sidewalks to other sidewalk locations. There's also going to be 2 light poles along Newhall Street itself that'll be put into this landscaped area and this landscaped area here. Coming on to the other side, which is lot 2, is an entranceway. Coming in here, proposed 7,150 square foot retail building here. Storefront entranceway here with a full walkway transitioning to the walkway on Gorham Street. Parking here and here in front of the building, as well as a loading and unloading area with plenty of area to maneuver vehicles in and out of the project site, as well as landscaping around the perimeter of the parking area for ample snow storage as well. You'll see here that there's a larger landscaped area than we typically see. We originally had an additional space here that's been reduced, and we increased the size of this landscaped area here to provide a little bit more buffer. And there's also there'll be a freestanding sign located here in this area as well. One of the additions that came up last week that's different from the original submission that we had made, because we're also working with DPD on a couple of different departments within the department, was to add 3 tree wells here and provide 3 proposed trees here to give some more texture and landscaping to the hardscape of the end of the building from Gorham Street. That essentially is the proposed project, and I can answer any questions you have.
I see a couple of things. On your lot number 2 building, you're butting right up against the sidewalk. Yeah, be nice, I mean, you show 3 trees in the upper building. Be nice if you could do that down there too. just for consistency on both sides of the roadway. Would dress it up a little bit, and,
Especially where you're not having an entrance there.
yeah,
Gorham Street. If you were fronting on Gorham Street and that was the entrance to your retail space, then it would make sense to have it on the sidewalk, but you're not.
but you're not. So maybe just a little greenery along there. And then the other thing that just pops right out at me immediately is, what kind of a buffer are you providing to the residential areas in the back? And it's something you really need to pay attention to, I think.
Yeah, so the residences are here.
Yeah,
So they're getting the buffer of the parking and the landscaped area from the building. So instead of the buildings backing up to their,
no, I know that, but those plantings along that strip and
yep, we have plantings all.
yeah, whatever you're doing there, just, make sure it's done right so
Sure.
that, I mean, it's a residential area, that's all.
So you're not proposing any fences along there?
No, right
Back
now
of-
there is fencing along the back of these properties, and that'll all remain.
Okay, it's their fence, right?
Yep. I'd like to note that this is a parking lot right now. It's a paved parking area that extends down to the street here, down below, which is Carter Street.
Yeah.
This is one large parking area.
Just a question, and I know when the renovation, proposed renovation for the Butler School came before us, and we approved that, I actually like this plan a heck of a lot better than what was, what was presented by, at that time. But I know a lot of the residents had concern with the circulation. I'm just curious, has there been any outreach at all to the abutters? Does the neighborhood know that you're looking at putting a street coming out there and extending New Hall Street?
I had principally Frank King, who owns a sizable amount of property on the backside there, get in touch with us, and we met with him in my office and with Steve and the principal and everybody. Frank was very pleased. His only concern was he didn't want street that's to the rear of the property turned into a one-way, and we said, well, it certainly isn't our intention to do that. And we also pointed out to him all of the landscaping and everything that we're going to be doing on that rear end over there. And he said it's wonderful, and he has offered, and we're going to take him up on the offer because he knows an awful lot of the neighbors in that immediate area. He's going to take us to meet and make sure that they get a full understanding of what we're doing. So obviously, we want to let them know too.
I mean, I like the plan, I just think that would be one of the biggest concerns coming out of the abutting neighborhood, obviously, if there's not a street coming out there
Right.
now. So,
I think they're going to be very pleased.
yeah.
He did say to me they were all upset about what has been there, and that they'll be very pleased with what it looks like. He saw our plans.
Yeah, and I don't blame the neighborhood that they had to deal with that building there way too long, and then, and I think they even had apprehension about the possibility of renovating the school and having the buses circulate around there, so, I think overall, I think retail is something that's needed around there. I think there's been some recent residential development along that area, but I think this would be a nice addition to that, and I am aware of the fact the city was looking for either some sort of mixed use or some sort of retail component, and I think this is a good, proposal at this point.
We could put a bank there too, Mr.
I'm not standing here advocating for it.
Looking at the, yes, adding, there's a lot right with this project. I feel like I was just so cruel to you, I should say some nice things now. There's a lot right with this project. The fundamental idea of connecting New Hall Street up to Gorham, opening it up like that, is a wonderful thing. And then putting some commercial use into there, combined with connecting the street through, that turns this into, in a sense, a neighborhood commercial center like we have throughout the city. And it's such an asset for our neighborhoods. And to the extent that that you can recreate that anew, you're doing something that's good for the neighborhood here. The way your auto entrances are off of this new Newhall Street, and you don't have any coming off of Gorham Street itself, good design decision. The way the two driveways are across from each other on Newhall Street, good design, Newhall Street extension, good design decision. The entrances to these buildings, they are not off of off of the parking lots on lot 1 up here. Your entrance doesn't come off of where your parking is. It comes almost out to Newhall Street extension through your little plaza. Good design decision. There's a lot that's right about this. This is traditional mixed use. And it's in a neighborhood of multi-story buildings. I'm wondering why you proposed single-story retail-only development and not mixed of any kind.
I guess I could say that the developer is being a little conservative, a little concerned. As you know, as we all know, we wouldn't call it the highest density of retail interests, shall we say, for that particular area, and that made him a little nervous. Is there a possibility? I don't know. Steve maybe can answer. I think it was difficult for him, Mr. Boyle, because he didn't know exactly who he was going to be dealing. He would have loved to have built a 4-story with offices above and the retail below, but it just didn't seem to warrant it at this time.
Has there been any discussion, Joe? Has there been any discussion internally in the city about land use on this site and whether a mixed retail office or retail residential use would be appropriate? Has that conversation happened?
It may have at some point, but it's not a conversation I'm aware of.
Okay.
Mr. Jonkis, I think, can speak to that, because he's been involved with the
Okay.
DPD folks.
As you know, this was the result of the city issuing a request for proposals on the development piece. And I think every respondent to the city's RFP submitted a response indicating 1-story retail. The difficulty with commercial office space in this market is that it would be difficult to finance it because you'd have a hard time, I think, convincing a lender that spec commercial office space would be economically viable. And in this case, the developer was willing to make the commitment on the retail side because he felt strongly that a retail market existed for this location. And as a result, was willing to proceed with actually acquiring the property and demolishing the abandoned school building prior to having any tenants secured, and engaging the rest of us in order to come up with the development plan. But I think from the standpoint of, again, risk and market demand, it would have been difficult for him to propose a building that would include both office and retail, strictly from a financing standpoint. That it'd be hard to convince a lender that that kind of use would be economically viable without having leases in hand.
What about residential?
He's not in the residential business, and he's not familiar with it. He's not experienced with it. You know, he has other commercial properties, so that's really his forte. And residential isn't part of what he's experienced with, and that's why he decided not to do that. And the other thing is, when you start thinking about the mixes of uses, you start thinking about what's the impact on parking and internal circulation and conflicts in that respect.
Yeah, I'm looking at your parking chart and your parking table, and you seem to have more than twice as much parking as is required under the zoning.
More than what's required under the zoning, but enough as required by a retail use.
Much as required by a retail use. Yes, by a retail use, one might find in a regional retail district.
Well, I think it's one of the appeals of this site, and it's one of the reasons why the retailers that we're talking with are expressing the real interest that they are expressing, is because we're able to not only fit their program in terms of building area, but also meet their other requirements as far as parking goes.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you know, the retail world today, everyone has a formula. And they also have a lot of other locations that they can look at, whether they're here or elsewhere. And from our perspective, part of the RFP was we want to see this site developed as expeditiously as possible because the city was interested in seeing the job creation that would result both from a construction standpoint as well as the permanent jobs that would be associated with the uses. And they were also interested in seeing the site converted to a taxable, revenue-producing project for the city. Again, part of what we're trying to do is undertake this so that if we're fortunate enough to secure the approvals that are necessary, he can get started on the construction prior to winter conditions setting in. And that's consistent, again, with the city's objective through the RFP process of seeing a project that's developed on an expedited schedule.
Okay, good answer. One of the things I really like here is the way the building on Lot 1, it follows the line of Gorham Street, it addresses that street, and it takes advantage of being a corner lot. It has a plaza that addresses Newhall Street. You have building, approachable, humane-scale building facing both of those streets. But you don't do that on Lot 2. What you've got from Lot 2 is it's along Gorham Street, okay, and then you have double-wide parking, parking space, aisle, parking space before you get to Newhall Street Extension. Was any consideration given, and you have sort of this L-shaped parking area, was any consideration given to perhaps flipping that site so that the building moves north so that it's on the corner, so that you're now addressing both streets the same way you address both streets with the northern building?
On the corner of Gorham?
On the corner of Gorham and Newhall Street Extension. Basically, take your building and push it north until it's on the corner. And now you have your parking on the south next to the existing parking lot, and you have, just like you do so nicely on that northern building, you're on both streets. You take advantage of your corner lot.
Well, it's kind of interesting, and I think some of the other board members will remember a project that I brought before the board on Chelmsford Street where the garages were by Queen's Pizza. And we had an incredible go-around on that. The city very much wants to have buildings up to the sidewalk, and they made that very clear here. And so I'm remembering that at some point, I think it was Mr. Gendron, after 2.5 hours of trying to decide how we were going to do the building where the next to Queen's Pizza was, we wanted to put it to the rear so that people could get in there and we put the building to the rear so people could get in. And the city was adamant that it be up on the sidewalk. So at some point, I think it was Mr. Gendron who said, why don't you flip the buildings and mirror the thing just like you just said now and put the parking up front and the building in the back. And I think, I don't know if Joe can speak for DPD, but I think they would be adamantly against it, based on what they've told us. They made that clear to us.
What about just turning the building and have the long side along Gorham Street and have parking? You basically just putting it on the street, the length of the lot, and you have all the parking in the rear.
You want to comment on that, Matt?
Yeah, I'd like to comment because I've been preparing a lot of these plans. I'd like to say this could be the 20th plan for this property. We've gone through numerous design formats with the DPD, taking a look at the intersection configuration off of Newhall, trying to coordinate the traffic in an ideal spot that give you enough distance away from the intersection, as well as wrapping in all the regulatory requirements and all the needs of all the individuals that have been involved in this process, as well as the footprints necessary for the retailers and what their needs were. But always working with DPD back and forth every time there was a design change. At one point, we did have entrances coming in off of Gorham Street. They said they wanted them focused off of Gorham Street because it's so busy, and have them off of Newhall. We also have turning radiuses of vehicles, queuing, a lot of issues relating to the aisles, the parking, having enough parking space, but trying to balance out the site. So this plan, even up until the other day, had changed. So this is where everyone's ended up, and it's ended up there for a number of different reasons related to landscaping, parking locations, building locations, pedestrian access. Vehicle turning is different when you're on Lot 1 than when you're on Lot 2, just in terms of getting a vehicle in there and then getting the vehicle back out to the roadway. So I just wanted to say that there was a fair amount of time put into this design, and that's how we ended up with this configuration, as well as the building sizes and their location relative to the potential leaser on those buildings. And the other thing that we've also been working with was the original plan that was submitted with the RFP, and trying to keep as consistent with that plan in terms of how the project was proposed originally and where it's ending up now as well. So we've been not only dealing with what was submitted in the RFP for what was expected on the property, but also working with DPD in terms of the circulation of the entire project.
Nice job, I like it.
Anybody have any further comments? Or
We thank you.
is this scheduled to come in 2 weeks too?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that, yeah, good. Nice
We
progress.
want to get moving on this one. This is
Yes.
ready to build.
Nice progress.
So we need the subdivision and site plan approval?
Yes.
Subdivision? Oh,
Yeah, because the
oh,
road
yeah,
needs the
yeah,
subdivision.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, right,
Right.
right.
So we have to meet the subdivision.
And site plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Matt, what's the length of the road?
Yeah, 230 feet long,
And what's the width? What, like 40, 45, something like that?
35 feet, which
35,
is
okay.
consistent of all the right-of-ways in the area.
Okay.
And the roadway's 24 feet in width. So we were able to put the 5-foot sidewalks at 24.
So we sidewalk from both sides or one
Yes,
side? Or
both sides.
Both sides? Okay, good.
Joe, I noticed that the one end of the street has big radius and the other didn't. That big radius, is that something the city's making them do, or is that something they're insisting on?
That was something, correct me if I'm wrong, that is a request upon you for the deliveries. The trucks need the wide radius for the deliveries that will be taking place for
Okay,
the prospective tenants.
okay, and that's why you don't need it on Livingston Street side, makes sense.
And we're also respecting any potential traffic that could be coming from the areas down New Hall Street as well.
Can I, okay, Matt, can I'm sorry, Joe. Can I just ask a question, Matt, on, and you may have mentioned this, on the sidewalks, the crossing, that you highlighted in green, the crosswalks, is that going to be textured pavement, or is that just going to be painted?
That'll be painted.
Painted.
Crosswalks. Originally, we had that crosswalk located here.
Yeah.
So we all decided that it would be better to pull that crosswalk back.
Shorter, yeah.
And make it shorter and get the crosswalk off of Gorham Street as well. So that was a design change that happened over the past couple weeks.
And internally, that'll be painted, not textured?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd be very interested to see what the traffic engineer has to say about this intersection on Gorham Street. Is this going to require a light?
No, it will not. There is a light that's there now, that's an emergency light for when the fire trucks are exiting the fire station.
Right.
So what we'll be doing is relocating that light and making sure that it remains the same functionality as it was before.
Is that lined up at Ellsworth Street? That's up north of Ellsworth.
That's a light that stops traffic coming down Gorham,
Yeah.
as well as stops traffic coming out of Ellsworth Street as well.
Right, I'm just asking about its current location. Is that currently at the Ellsworth Street intersection, or is that north of the Ellsworth Street intersection?
The light is currently located right here.
Oh, okay.
There's an armature that goes out and serves two functions, to Ellsworth Street in here, and there's also an additional light here
Okay.
as well. So all that's going to be relocated and working with Eric Eby as well.
Okay.
So we have sat down with Eric regarding that.
All right.
Good luck, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good. Please to get out before midnight, Mr.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I grew up in this neighborhood, and I frequent this, right here.
Oh, yeah.
Where Frank had his operation, he's operating out of my old house, my parents' house. So I went to the school, I went to the school. I'm on the phone, all my youth. This road was. Yeah, where Frank King's place is.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay,
he bought my parents' house.
okay.
Oh, you still have
Small world, as they.
Yeah. But,
Good night, thank you.
Hey, Matt, is either one of those easels yours?
Yeah.
Okay. So don't forget that one there, yeah. Okay, moving along, we have under other business, we have any notices from budding towns? I don't see anything of those. We have no ZBA notices. Does any of the planning boards have any further comments or updates? I noticed one thing, I got a packet in the mail from the city clerk about the open meeting laws. Joe, we have to sign off on that. Do we get that back to you, or just
I
mail it
got
back to the
another
clerk?
one, too, but I got, that's the second one I got.
Yeah, you could just get that back to staff. I think it's just an annual thing that has to be signed, that you acknowledge that you're aware of
sheet you
open
gotta
meeting law.
sign.
Yeah, it talks about the open meeting laws and wants us to read to make sure we understand it all, but then it also mentioned about the other online training that we already did, so we've already
Yeah.
completed all that, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. When I saw that again, I'm like, is that duplicate again, or, but then it just said sign the open meeting law, and I saw all that stuff in there, so for the information we get there, we should sign that and get it back to staff?
Yeah.
Okay. Any of the board members have any other updates? If not, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's made.
Second.
And second, all in favor say aye.
Aye?
Chair votes yes. We are adjourned, and good night, and thank you, everyone.